Making sure everything's all right. Looks like we're good. I think we're good. Everybody, sound check. All systems go. Um, yeah. Awesome. All right, what's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and as you all know, the Unearthed Arcana Playtest number 5 has released. I will do a TLDR version of this at some point. Feel free to share with your friends of the channel, and all that good stuff. Get people in here. So I'm going to do my best to focus on this. It is a very long Unearthed Arcana. I was doing a bunch of stuff for work before this started, so I was able to, while bouncing back and forth, read through a bunch of it. So at least the beginning part, we should be able to get through pretty quick, which is pretty exciting to me. Don't know if I may have to like pause at points, but for the most part, we're going to try to just run through things. I will also do my best to address you guys in chat. The only problem is there's a lot of stuff to cover here, and if I keep diverting to chat, this is going to take forever. Although I am admitting that it will likely take a long time anyway, because it is 50 pages long. So, that being said, just wanted to get that all kind of out of the way up front before we dive into the specifics here. So, okay, let's go to show you where you go to get it, right? So, D&D Beyond, you're going to go to Sources, 1 D&D Playtest, and then you're going to go, well, here, Sources, 1 D&D Playtest. You're going to go, wait a minute. Hold on. Did it disappear? No. Okay, there it is. Yeah. This right here. Player's Handbook Playtest 5. So then you're going to go, and this is it right here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And then, unfortunately, you guys were right. I thought Monk, well, at the summit, Content Creator Summit, they said this was going to cover every class. It appears Monk was indeed left out of this. It's a little too close for me. So I'm back it out a little bit. All right. So first of all, we have the weapons tables. There is a little bit of updates over here. As you can see, there's the mastery column, which is kind of the main focus. We'll talk about that in just a sec. But you'll see these couple of things here, right? Trident's damage die was changed from a D6 to a D8, and its versatile die is now a D10. Lance has the heavy and two-handed property. They removed special, and they reduced its damage from a D12 to a D10, which I think is a bummer. And Warpick now has the versatile property. They're adding musket and pistol to the main player's handbook as opposed to just being squirreled away in the DMG. The throne property, which I really like, you can draw and throw the weapon all as part of the same attack, which is nice. So like if you're a dagger bandolier person, draw and throw. Pretty cool to see that. And then the light property now appears in the section here as opposed to in the glossary. So that being said, I am a little bummed that we didn't see any new weapons, and I thought maybe we were going to see some adjustments, because I feel like, and this is an opportunity for many of us to homebrew the variety of different options for like what I would call the weapons that are, there's like a gap, as it were, right? So you can see that, for example, the Greatsword does 2d6 slashing damage, and the Maul does 2d6 bludgeoning damage. I would love for there to be a 2d6 piercing damage weapon, right? We used to have the Great Axe doing a d6 slashing damage, and the Lance doing at the time a d12 piercing damage, and I thought it would be cool to have a d12 bludgeoning damage weapon. So this is, again, an opportunity for you and I to homebrew, to kind of fill the void on some of these types of weapons that don't exist. But either way. So let's go ahead and keep going. Here we can see also the other martial weapons. Here's again musket and pistol, and then again blowgun, unfortunately, still a bummer. But as I said, you'll see this new column here called Mastery, and that's sort of the main thing here, that if you have access to unlock the Mastery, they all get a unique opportunity to do something. Again, we talked about Light and Throne. Not a big deal. The only thing I did notice with light weapons is when you take the attack action on your turn and attack with a light weapon, you can make one extra attack as a bonus action later on the same turn. Meaning that you can't take the bonus action attack first. You have to do the attack first and the bonus action second. That may have always been the case, but the wording just kind of caught me a little bit there. Okay, weapon or mastery properties. Each weapon now has a mastery property as shown in the weapon tables above. That property is usable only by a character who has a feature such as weapon mastery that unlocks the property for the character. So it is you don't do anything to activate the weapon mastery property. It just kind of happens. If you have it unlocked. And you'll see that there are prerequisites listed for some of these, and that's due to something like the Fighters feature we'll talk about later on, where they can assign or swap weapon masteries with different ones. So if it says it has to be a melee heavy weapon, you couldn't add cleave to a weapon that isn't melee and heavy, which we'll get to in a second. So that being said, cleave, if you hit a creature with a melee attack using this weapon, you can make a second attack with the weapon against a second character within 5 feet of the first. That's also within your reach. On a hit, the second creature takes the damage, but you don't add your ability modifier unless that modifier is negative. You can only do this once per turn. I really like this. This is actually a pretty useful ability. It kind of almost gives you the equivalency of two-weapon fighting, but wielding a heavy melee, a singular weapon. Normally, two-weapon fighting is very much like the quick two-handed daggers, scimitars, what have you. This is like if you're wielding like a, I don't know, say like a glaive perhaps, or a great axe, and you hit somebody, you could then hit somebody again, effectively not adding the ability modifier, but more or less giving you almost two-weapon fighting, but with like a heavy weapon in that capacity. It also would benefit like things from advantage because it is a secondary attack roll. It also has the potential to crit, and if you have the means of adding extra weapon damage or extra damage on hits with attacks, that would also apply. For example, a Barbarian's Rage would apply to both attacks, and I believe Cleave is present on the Great Axe, so, that's a pretty useful just way to increase your DPS overall. So, that being said, we'll move on to the next one. Flex is the next one here. This requires a versatile weapon, which allows you to do the versatile two-handed damage with one hand. So, for example, a longsword that would deal a d8 damage one-handed or a d10 wielded in two hands could now just deal a d10 with two hands. All right. Graze, the melee weapon and heavy property. So, as you can see, right, you could swap cleave and graze. If your attack roll misses, you deal damage to that creature equal to the ability modifier you use to make that roll. The damage type is the same dealt by the weapon. It can't be increased anyway other than increasing the ability modifier. So again, I know, for example, Graze is present on a... got a greatsword, so like if you miss with the greatsword, you could still deal damage. Unfortunately, it is limited to melee. It would have been cool to put like graze on a heavy crossbow so that you could like graze them with the arrow, but I get it. The arrow misses a lot more than like if you cleave down with a greatsword. So I like it a lot. It will increase the floor of your damage rather than the ceiling, which is actually pretty interesting to see. And again, it's any heavy melee weapon. It's not any. Let me rephrase. It is present. Graze is present on the glaive and the greatsword, and that is it. However, fighters have an opportunity later on in their toolkit to swap out the mastery with anything else that meets the prerequisite. So a fighter could take graze and apply it to any heavy melee weapon, which would be interesting because if you look, you could take and add graze to a lance. You could add it to a maul. It's pretty cool stuff. So I like the versatility. Again, it also makes me more interested in playing a fighter more than I ever have been before. And to your point, Josh Olson, I saw in the chat, a higher level fighter could potentially be dealing a minimum of 20 points of damage per turn with all of their attacks, not including something like action surge. Even if you miss, just doing the base minimum damage is huge. That's a really cool concept. All right. Moving on to the Nick property. This is a light weapon property. When you make an extra attack of the light weapon, you can make it as part of the attack action instead of a bonus action. You can still make this attack only once per turn. So they changed the way light weapons worked. Previously in the Unearthed Arcana, if you made 2 attacks, or you had 2 light weapons, you could make an attack and then a second attack as part of that attack action, essentially freeing up your bonus action. That ability has now been reserved to the Nick property of weapons, as opposed to the using your... Normally, people would use your bonus action, but potentially if rogues do get access to weapon mastery in some capacity, this means you could possibly bring this back with, like, you know, multi-attack with daggers and still have your bonus action. Yes, you can, right? That's exactly what it says. When you make an attack with the light property, you can make its attack as part of the attack action instead of a bonus action. Therefore, when using Nick, it will allow you to still have your full access to your bonus action. Push, heavy, two-handed, or versatile. So you could technically push with a longsword. Knock somebody, hit a creature with this weapon, you can push them 10 feet away as long as they are no more than 1 size larger than you. Notice there is no saving throw associated with this push, and it's a 10-foot push. So there's a lot of combat maneuverability here with this push weapon. You could push somebody off a cliff, no saving throw. Push them into a fire pit, no saving throw. Very interesting stuff there. And again, you can potentially, as a fighter, swap this around. Sap, which is it has no other properties at all. If you hit a creature with this weapon, they have disadvantage on their next attack roll before the start of your next turn. Slow is when you hit them, you reduce their movement speed by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. It can increase it more than 10. It also says if you hit the creature more than once with this property, the speed reduction doesn't exceed 10 feet. However, if I hit him with a slow weapon and you hit him with a slow weapon, as far as I can tell, we can reduce their movement speed by 20 feet. That's pretty cool. And if you have a whole team of people doing this, you could possibly shut somebody down and lock their movement out completely. And if we look, slow is typically reserved for weapons, right? You see longbow, musket, or like ranged weapons, whip, crossbow, sling, javelin. So yeah, push. There is, to your point, Demnix. There is no limitation on the push. So if you have the opportunity to push people multiple times per turn, you could, right? So let's see what weapons typically have access to push. The Great Club. It's more like your maul kind of weapons here, right? Oh no, wait, maul is topple. Push is not a lot. Great Club. Pike. Heavy crossbow. Oh. Well, okay. Heavy crossbow has push, and there is no limitation to how many times you can push. So if you have a means of ignoring the loading property on, say, a fighter with multiple attacks, you could hit with multiple arrows and just continue to push an enemy 10 feet each turn with no saving throw, as long as they are no more than 1 size larger than you. You're saying push people 40 feet? Yeah, potentially up to 80 feet if you have action surge. And remember, it can be swapped as a higher level fighter with any heavy two-handed weapon or any versatile property weapon, which I'll remind you that the longbow is a heavy two-handed weapon. So as a higher level fighter, you could ditch it off of crossbow and put it onto longbow. And if you had something that allows you to ignore the long range, you could potentially be pushing people up to 40 feet a turn, up to possibly 80 with action surge, up to 600 feet away. Like, this is wild concepts, what you could do with this. So I like that. I like that a lot, that you could swap it around. There is no limitation on push. Again, like I was saying with slow, you can only slow somebody 10 feet a turn. But if your whole team has access to weapons with slow, you could basically lock somebody down movement-wise if you're strategic. And I think this is ultimately the point of this, right? it's to add this kind of strategy. In my game that I'm playing on Tuesday nights, we have our party is a ranger, fighter, and a rogue, right? If we all had access to weapon mastery, we don't have a lot of spell casting, and I'm not saying you need spell casting, but it does afford the opportunity for a lot of unique interactions and battlefield control situations. When we're all martial types for the most part, this kind of stuff could give us a lot more versatility than you could normally have. Longbow is heavy. Don't lie to me. Look at this right here. Longbow. Heavy. Don't lie. That's why halflings can't use longbows. Ammunition, heavy, two-handed. Longbow is a heavy weapon. I did see the video. I watched most of it. That they're basically talking about what we're talking about here, because all of that stuff comes later on. Okay. Then topple, heavy, reach, or versatile. This one does require a saving throw, right? They make a Constitution saving throw based on your attack roll ability modifier, and if they fail, the creature is knocked prone. However, there is no limitation to the size on topple, which I think is pretty awesome. Now, it is Constitution saving throw, which is kind of a bummer because a lot of monsters do have good Constitution saving throws, but that's okay. But can we talk about how badass it would be for you to have, I think topple's present on the maul, and I just say that because mauls are one of my favorite weapons, right? So topple is on the maul. Can we talk about how cool it would be for you, potentially a medium-sized creature, to just bring low like a giant or something larger by cracking them in the leg or the knee, and you knock them prone even though they're 2 or more sizes larger than you? Talk about a cool cinematic fight moment where it's like, oh, we're having a hard time, and you just come up and just knock their legs out from underneath them with the maul, and they're down on the ground, and then the party can just assault them. That's pretty cool. And again, Ricky the Wizard, right, make 8 saves. In theory, there's no limitation to this either. If you have multiple attacks, you can force them to make multiple Constitution saving throws, the opportunity of potentially one of them failing. Strength saving throw makes a little more sense in my mind, but most monsters, I feel like, depending, right, Constitution is usually pretty good for them regardless, right? So you could, I get your concept, right? If it's more of a dexterous monster, and it being a strength saving throw, you stand a better chance of knocking them prone. Either way, this is playtest. It could end up becoming strength by the time. Also, I forgot to give my disclaimer at the start. This is playtest information, folks. This could all be subject to change. Just keep that in breath. And then Vex requires ammunition, finesse, or the light property. And if you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to that creature, you have advantage on your next attack roll against that creature before the end of your next turn. And it was confirmed at the summit that, yes, this is a potential way for, like, a rogue, if you have access to this, to give yourself your own sneak attack. You can self-initiate sneak attack by just hitting something. And again, it is ammunition and finesse or the light weapon property. So you could potentially add Vex to something like, well, I don't know, a scimitar, right? Because a scimitar is a finesse light weapon. It normally has Nick. If you wanted it to have Vex, you could. It kind of makes sense. I like it on a rapier where you kind of poke somebody and now it's easier to poke them again. So that's pretty cool, in my opinion. And then did we get, oh, they changed net. It is no longer a weapon. It is a piece of adventuring gear, as you can see here, right? When you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace one of your attacks with a throw of a net at a creature within 15 feet. It makes a dex save based on your dexterity modifier. It succeeds if it's huge or larger. On a failure, it is restrained as per the condition until it escapes the net. It is a DC 10 athletics check to escape. A creature within 5 feet of the target can use its action to attempt to free it. You can destroy it as well, but it's now a piece of adventuring gear, not a weapon. And it is part of the, you can use one of your attacks to use it. And then they, for some reason, just added in the Priest's Pack. I don't know why that's here. It doesn't really seem like it fits there, but either way. Did it have, maybe there was a design note on it and I just missed it. I don't know, whatever. It is there. Yes, we just talked about it. Net is no longer a weapon. It's adventuring gear. And it just has a range of 15 feet now. It's not like a range of 0 or whatever the weird stuff was. It's like, it's just 15 feet regardless. All right. Then we move on to spells. And again, it goes on to just talk about, there's some changes to some of the spells list. Some new spells have been added. We'll scroll through this to just get to the main bit here. There are 11 new spells, which are very cool. It says Chaos Bolt from Xanathar's Guide to Everything has been brought forward into the player's handbook. Eldritch Blast now scales, this is important, with your Warlock level. So no longer being a level 17 character and just taking Eldritch Blast from Magic Initiate to get 4 rays. It's based off of your Warlock level. So to get more rays with Eldritch Blast, you need to be a Warlock, which I totally understand, right? It's the Warlock's thing. It should be better for them, and that's what they're doing. You could still take it from other ones, but it'll just be a cantrip that does a d10 damage rather than its rays scaling, unless you happen to be a Warlock. And Hex, it only deals its extra damage once per turn, which is kind of a bummer, because normally the move was put Hex on a creature, blast him with multiple Eldritch Blasts, and get that extra damage. It's now only once per turn. So you hit him with Hex, it does an extra d6 necrotic damage. It still does all the other Hex things that it normally does, but it only applies damage once per turn. No more hitting him with Hex, and then blasting him 4 times with Eldritch Blast for that extra 46 damage. However, if you cast Hex with a higher level spell slot, I think 5th level spell slot, it does 3d6 damage on that one hit as opposed to 1d6 multiple times. Correct, brings it in line with Hunter's Mark. However, Hunter's Mark is more power. Or does Hunter's Mark now only apply once per turn? Did they change that? I forget. If Hunter's Mark applies on every hit, then Hunter's Mark is slightly more powerful. But Hex is just a freebie thing given to Warlocks now. Also, Warlocks have spell slots if you haven't got there. Spoiler alert, right? They don't have pact magic. They have full spell slots now. So consider that. And again, the Eldritch Blast changes probably also, as mentioned in the chat here, to combat crazy multi-classing opportunities. All right. So the spells are all over the place. They're in alphabetical order. I'll just read through them. Okay. Arcane Interruption is a brand new Sorcerer exclusive spell. 4th level with a range of 120 feet. It's like a fireball, but it's damage choosable and it got a little other options to it. And the thought process behind a lot of this is that a lot of Sorcerer subclasses have things that trigger off when you do a certain damage type. However, there's not a lot of options, so they gave Sorcerers a lot of abilities that give them versatility in how they choose the damage type they want to do. And that's what this is about. So, okay. Choose an area within 120 feet. It causes a magical 20-foot radius sphere explosion. You choose the damage type: acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, psychic, or thunder. Each creature within that sphere must make a Constitution saving throw or take 66 damage of the chosen type. Now, you may be saying, Ted, that's a nerf because Fireball does 8d6 and it's a 3rd level spell. However, there is something unique to it here. Choose one of the d6 that you roll. The number rolled on that die determines a condition that's applied to each creature that failed the saving throw. And the options are incapacitated, blinded, frightened, poisoned, charmed, or deafened. It lasts until the end of your next turn. So, and then again, if you cast it with a higher level spell slot, a 5th level or higher, it increases a d6. So I like this. I think this is a general move overall, or general improvement to, like, it's Fireball with damage versatility, but also combat control. And I like that. It does suck that it's a Constitution saving throw, again, with our conversations regarding Constitution saving throws, but either way. So it is a new Sorcerer exclusive spell. Then we'll move on to Book of Shadows, which is a new Warlock exclusive cantrip, which is part of the sort of pact aspects here. Sorry, I got a text message. All right, casting time 1 hour. And it says you basically call strands of shadow and conjure forth a book in your hand. The book contains eldritch magic that only you can access, and it gives you the following benefits. Choose 2 cantrips, choose 2 first-level spells that have the ritual tag. They can be from any spell list. Basically, they appear in the book, and you can cast those spells as though you had them prepared. You can also use the book as a spellcasting focus, and it disappears when you use this spell again or you die. And then it also has an upgrade for when you reach 5th level. The spell also enhances the cantrips while the book is on your person. You add your Warlock spellcasting ability modifier to the damage rolls of any cantrip you cast that doesn't already have that modifier added to its damage roll. Meaning, like if you have Agonizing Blast, adding your Warlock spellcasting ability modifier to the damage roll, you couldn't do it here again to get double dip, but you could say add, I don't know, something like, and it does say from the Arcane Divine or Primal Spell list, so I don't know if this technically would allow you to add the Sorcerer spells that are specific to Sorcerers to this list. If not, you could just choose something like Firebolt, but now it's Firebolt plus damage, or if it's an AoE thing like Acid Splash or Sword Burst or whatever, it will add, you know, the extra damage, spellcasting ability modifier damage to it, which is a nice little bit of versatility, and I like that it also gets kind of the bump up when you hit a higher level. Or again, it could be from Divine, right, as well. And then we have Chaos Bolt. The Warlock spell, again, has been moved into the player's handbook, and it does have all of its kind of confusing damage bits clarified. So make an attack roll. On a hit, the target takes 2d8 plus 1d6 damage. That's a fair amount of damage for a first level spell, right? 2d8 plus 1d6. Choose one of the d8s. The number rolled on that die determines the damage type, as you can see here, right? Acid, Cold, Fire, Force, Lightning, Poison, Psychic, or Thunder. If you roll the same number on both d8s, the chaotic energy leaps from that target to another target within 30 feet. You make a new attack roll against that, and potentially if you do the same damage to roll again, it can leap again. You just can't hit the same target, but you could potentially keep cycling through if you manage to keep rolling doubles on your d8s. Again, doubles plus the d6. And then at a higher level, you will add an extra d6 to this d6 over here each time. So, no, you can't. Sorry, yeah, okay, we answered that. That's good. All right. Then we have, I'm going to skip Create Spell because that's kind of confusing when you don't hear everything else. So let's go on to Eldritch Blast. As we said, 120 feet, make an attack roll, d10 force damage. The spell creates more than one beam when you reach higher Warlock levels, as I stated, 2 at 5, and everything's basically the same. You make a separate attack roll. You can direct the beams at a single target or different ones. That's the same. Here's the changes to Hex. Bonus action, 90 feet, concentration up to an hour. D6 necrotic damage to a target you hit with an attack roll. You can deal this damage only once per turn, which is unfortunate. Then it still has its negative, right? You choose one of the 6 abilities. The target has disadvantage on ability checks made with the chosen ability. If they drop to 0 hit points, you can use a bonus action to transfer it to somebody else. They did add in this concept here of remove curse, ends the spell early, which I think is a new option. And then again, it does still have the increased duration at higher levels. If you use a slot of 3rd or 4th, you can maintain concentration on it for up to 8 hours. And the extra damage increases by 2d6. And if you use a 5th level slot, you can maintain concentration on it for up to 24 hours, and the extra damage does 3d6. So it does get to do a little bit of extra damage if you upcast the spell. However, because of the changes to Warlocks, you don't actually have to forcibly upcast it because you don't have pact magic anymore. You have actual spell slots. So that's a voluntary choice for you to make. I'm also going to skip Memorize Spell till I get to the beginning because you have to kind of see them in order. All right, same with Modify Spell. All right, Pact Familiar. This is the Pact of the Chain based one, right? Concentration or casting time of an hour, range of 10 feet. When you summon an unearthly entity, it's your Pact Familiar. You get to choose what it is. Aberration, it's a flump for a knot of tentacles. Celestial, owl, raven, or other bird. Dragon, pseudo-familiar, or pseudo-dragon or similar dragonette. Fey, pixie or sprite, fiend, imperquisite, or undead, shadow or skull. It affects its appearance, and it'll affect some stuff later on we'll talk about. Combat, it works pretty much the same way. It shares your initiative count, goes after you. It uses its dodge and its move, unless you use your reaction to command it to attack. If it drops to 0 hit points, it disappears, or if you dismiss it, or if you die, it leaves behind anything it was wearing or carrying. If you cast it again, you can choose to summon it into the same one or a new one. As a magic action, which is what we call spellcasting, right? Magic action now. You can see what your familiar sees and hear what it hears. If you upgrade the cantrip casting here at 5th level, you can communicate telepathically with your familiar as long as you're on the same plane of existence, and you can perceive through its senses and speak through it in your own voice. So they kind of have condensed some of what were, aspects and different things to it to just this kind of spell that casts it in the first place. And it has its own unique stat block here. Depending on the type, it has 10 plus your spellcasting ability modifier and natural armor, 5 plus your warlock level in hit points, 40-foot movement speed plus 40-foot fly speed, and can hover. Immunity to charmed, exhausted, dark vision to 120 feet, telepathy out to 120 feet. You can add your proficiency bonus to any ability check or saving throw that it makes. And then its attack is called Eldritch Strike. It is a spellcasting ability modifier attack, or spellcast, your melee spell attack, your spell attack modifier to hit. And then the damage is 2 plus half your warlock level rounded down. So potentially at level 20, you're dealing 12 points of damage. And the damage type is determined by what creature you choose, either acid, radiant, fire, psychic, poison, or necrotic. And then invisibility, the familiar has the invisible condition until the end of its next turn. So all of them can turn invisible. Then we also get Pact Weapon. This is really cool because it actually combines some of the what were invocations into basically just the generation of the Pact Weapon itself. So it lasts for 24 hours. It must lack the heavy property, and it fails if you touch a magic item that somebody else is attuned to. When you attack with this weapon, you can use your spellcasting ability modifier for the attack and damage rolls instead of strength and dexterity. Remind you, they will possibly update Hexblade when it comes out. There's going to be 4 warlocks in this player's handbook. Probably the original 3, and then they will grab one from either Xanathar's Guide or Tasha's and include it. My assumption would be Hexblade, given how prominent and it is enjoyed. However, we have removed a lot of the Hexblade uniqueness to add it to the Pact Weapon option here, right? So again, if you just have Pact Weapon, you get to use your spellcasting ability modifier right out the gate. Proficiency bonus, you are proficient with the weapon, and then if it has the thrown property, it returns to you immediately after hitting or missing. It ends early if you cast it again, or if the conjured weapon disappears. But its cantrip upgrade is that when you reach 5th level, it gets extra attack. That weapon has extra attack. You don't have it personally, but when you use that weapon, it has extra attack, so you can make 2 attacks. And that's just tied into being Pact of the Blade and having this Pact Weapon cantrip. All right, so let's take a look at the Scribe spell. This is a wizard exclusive spell, and this is kind of how you add spells to your spell book. And it has multiple kind of up tiers as we get through things like memorize spell, modify spell, create spell. Okay, so this is a 1st level spell. The casting time is 2 hours per level of the scribed spell. It requires 50 gold pieces of fine inks per level of the scribed spell. So rather than it just being a function of the spell book, it's now a spell you cast. All right. Channeling, you need a spell book. As you magic, the scribe spell must be of a level which you have spell slots, and the book must lack the spell. As you magically scribe the spell, you must copy it from another spell book or a spell scroll, or you must have it prepared. If you copy it from a spell scroll, the scroll is destroyed. If you have the spell prepared, the casting time and components are halved. When the scribing is complete, the spell becomes one of your spells known in the book, appearing on its own page if the book was out of pages. It appears in the cipher that's understandable only to you or someone casting identifier scribe scroll. And if the book was blank before the scribing, the book is now your own, and now in your spell book. So this is how you add spells to your spell book now. It's via this spell here, not like just a sidebar piece of the spell book in the player's handbook. Now, I also forgot that there was another cantrip down here, which is, there's a couple others. So, you know what? I said we're going to do wizard. Let's do wizard. So, scribe scroll. Then we go to, I think it's memorize spell is the 3rd level spell. You choose one spell from your spell book this is a 3rd level spell. It is a ritual spell, and it is 1 minute casting time. If you choose one spell from your spell book that you don't have prepared, and you choose another spell that you do have prepared, and you swap them, which is really cool because if you could build out your repertoire of spells, And then now with a 1 minute ritual spell, not using a spell slot, you could swap a prepared spell with an unprepared spell. However, it lasts until you cast Memorize Spell again or finish a long rest, but there's nothing stopping you from swapping multiple things to give you even more versatility in your spellcasting as a wizard, and I really appreciate that. When you cast this spell using a spell slot of 4th level or higher, you can replace an additional prepared spell with an unprepared spell for each slot level above 3rd. So that's, I think, more if you don't have the time, whereas you could just ritual cast this to give yourself a lot of the ability to swap things out, and I like that a lot. All right, so that was, then we have Modify Spell, which is really, really interesting. So this is a 4th level spell, a ritual, right? Using arcane formulas in your spellbook, you can alter one spell you have prepared. You can change the spell's color, sound, and smell, and you make one of the following modifications to that spell. Components. You can remove one of the spell's components, verbal, somatic, or material, unless it's a material component that has a monetary cost. So flat out remove, if this is a spell that only has a verbal component, you could remove that component entirely. Concentration. If the spell requires concentration, damage can't break your concentration on the spell at all. Damage type. If the spell has a damage type, change the damage type to be one of the following: acid, cold, fire, lightning, necrotic, poison, or thunder. If it has multiple damage types, you can only replace one. Range. If it has a range of at least 5 feet and doesn't have a range of self, you increase the range by a number of feet equal to 30 times your wizard level. Okay? If it has a range of 5 feet or more, you now increase its range. Not change the range to, increase the range by a number of feet equal to 30 times your wizard level. Okay? Can we talk about how if you're a 5th level wizard, well, you probably have to be more than that because this is a 4th level spell. You're a 10th level wizard, okay? You could increase the range of Fireball by 300 feet on top of its already existing range by using this. And you can be like, hey, see that guy 500 feet away? Boom! And just launch your Fireball way over there and blow him up. People are pointing out Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade. Technically, yes, they do have, I believe, unless that got changed at a point, they do have a 5-foot range, which doesn't allow you to potentially increase them. And then Ritual. This is also really interesting. If the spell lacks the Ritual tag and has the casting time of at least 10 minutes, you can make it a Ritual spell, which potentially means you don't have to spend a spell slot on it. Or, this also really interesting, targets. And you might be like, this is all funky. Wait, just wait. Targets. If the spell affects one or more creatures and doesn't have a range of self, it now affects only your allies or your enemies you choose. So you could basically give yourself a fireball that doesn't damage allies if you're not an evocation wizard. This is just like, this is Ted's fireball. It only hurts enemies, doesn't hurt allies. That's just a thing now. So, the chosen alteration lasts until you cast Modify Spell again, or until you finish a long rest. When you cast this spell using a spell of 5th level or higher, you can choose an additional spell modification. Did you hear me on that, folks? An additional spell modification for each spell slot above 4th. You could cast 5th level Modify Spell on a fireball and say, my fireball now has a range of 500 feet, and it only affects enemies. And that's my new modified version of fireball that exists in my spellbook. Right? That's a thing you could do. Or it's a lightning-based fireball. Or how about haste and you never break concentration on it? You don't even have to do anything crazy with that. It's just haste, and then I can never concentrate. Damage can't break my concentration on haste. Always on, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Or like, what's a really cool spell that would be great? Oh no. Oh no. What about a counter spell with no components? You cast counter spell, you could make your counter spell range 360 feet, and it doesn't require a component. So no one can counterspell your counterspell because they don't know that it's coming, and you could do it out to 300 feet, and that's just a 5th level casting of Modify Spell. Can you talk about that? Because that's freaking amazing. Right? The biggest downside of Counterspell is it's a 60-foot range, and that it can be re-counterspelled. But with a 5th level casting of Modify Spell, it is now, again, if you cast it at 10th level, a 360-foot range counterspell with no components involved at all. Now, that all sounds good, right? But what if it was permanent? What do you mean, Ted? What if you took that spell and created a brand new one that is that but all the time forever? Welcome to the 5th level transmutation spell, Create Spell. A reaction in response to you casting Modify Spell. So we spend a 5th level spell slot and recast up. You know what? You could make it smell like whatever you want and make it purple. But it's going to be me. So it's going to be an orange counterspell that smells like pizza. It's got a 360-foot range, and it has no components. As a reaction to us casting that spell, we cast Create Spell. Now, it does require an arcane focus that is consumed by the spell, worth at least 1,000 gold pieces per level of the spell altered by Modify Spell. So we're altering a 3rd level spell. So 3,000 gold pieces. That's a hefty price. We can all agree with that. However, synthesizing your arcane knowledge and power, you strive to create a new spell. To succeed, you must concentrate for 1 hour and meditate on the spell you just altered with Modify Spell, otherwise this spell fails. If you succeed, you must start casting Scribe Spell, which is this one over here, right, where we're going to add it to our spell book. You must start casting Scribe Spell within the next 10 minutes and add the altered spell to your spell book. Once the spell is in your spell book, it becomes one of your known spells. It gains the wizard source tag rather than the arcane tag, and you name the spell whatever you want to name it. This is the coolest fucking shit I've seen in a long time, and Wizards was really blowing my mind with this. I mean, come on, right? Like, this is wild. And I can't 100% confirm, and I'll have to read through it, but did we just do that and it's still only a 3rd level spell? Because I think that's what we just did. And we spent 3,000 gold and cast 2 spell slots, but is our counterspell still only a 3rd level spell slot? Modify is not permanent. It does have a qualifier. The chosen alteration lasts until you cast Modify Spell again or you finish a long rest. This altered version of the spell can't be added to a spellbook or spell scroll without first casting Create Spell. Also, you can scribe this onto a scroll and give it to your friends, in theory, right? Or have your fellow wizard copy it out of your spellbook if you want. So yeah, we could have like Ted's Tumultuous Counterspell, or however you want to call it, and that's a new spell that's a 360-foot range. And I mean, not that you want to do this, but you could name this spell like, you know, fuck you, DM, or whatever you want to call your DM's name and throw it in there. And be like, yeah, I'd like to use my 3rd level spell, like screw you, DM. It's where I counterspell and you can't block it. See you later. You also, somebody brought it up in the chat, right? Don't give your PCs gold. This is another potential opportunity to shred through gold if the players have too much. This is a way they could do that. So I love this so much. And Yeah, as far as I can tell, you're not upcasting the spell either, as far as I can tell. You magically alter one spell. The chosen spell. Yeah, so basically all you're doing is altering the spell. So it would, as far as I can tell, with a 5th level casting of modify spell, followed immediately by a 5th level casting of create spell, my counter spell is now a 3rd level counter spell, but altered in this way, I think. I'd also be comfortable if it was a 5th level counter spell and that's what it did. I'd be okay with that, right? I understand, like, if that's what I had to do to make it be a thing, but as far as I can tell, that's just how it works. And folks, I haven't even broken, like, can you think about what you could do with this? Like, there is so many, like, you have infinite possibilities on what you can do by allowing to have this kind of tweaking and alteration to spellcasting. It is to your spellbook. Okay, all right. That's fair. Does that work? No, come on. Hold on. That's not how you spell it, is it? It's 2 R's resurrection? 1 resurrection. 1 R. Hang on. Huh. Yeah, you could make resurrection a ritual spell. As long as you have the diamonds to do it, you could make ritual or resurrection a ritual spell that, again, you can't do it because wizards don't have access to resurrection. But in theory, if you're able to come with some convoluted way to get access to it, you could. Again, not normally a wizard spell, so that's kind of a moot point in that aspect. But if you find a way to do it, you could. Right? In theory. It does say it has to be an arcane spell. So unless... Well, here's the thing. Like, you remember the arcane domain cleric? Oh, that's a cleric. Never mind. I'm thinking of other stuff. Never mind. But either way, if there's a way for you to get access to it. But there's just so much you can do. Like, my brain is breaking with what stuff you can do. I mean, the fact that concentration can't break you, I'm glad that they didn't have, like, it removes concentration on the spell, because that would have been absolutely bonkers. So I'm glad they just said damage can't break the concentration. But I'm sure we've all been in a situation where somebody cast haste on someone, or you cast it on yourself, and you break concentration from damage, and then that person just loses a whole turn. Having that not be an issue anymore would be huge, right? Or even there are so many cool things where just the removal of spell components, like, I think like telekinesis. Is telekinesis just like a somatic component for it? What is telekinesis? Verbal and somatic. So in theory, with a 5th level casting of modify spell on telekinesis, it could just have no components and you could just think it and it happens, which is pretty cool, right? Or if you wanted to feel more like a Jedi, you could remove the verbal component of telekinesis, so it's just like you use your hand to do these things. There's a lot of fun aspects and unique things you can do with this. And I like that they leaned into, like, this is the wizard's aspect, right? Everybody's wizard wants to create a spell. And some people have the mental capacity to, like, come up with a unique spell with unique options that you can just do. And, like, your DM okays it and it gets added to your spell book, right? This gives people a quantifiable way for people who may not have that sort of, mental dexterity or imagination to come up with it, that you could design. And honestly, from like what we said with this, even just the simple thing is changing a damage to making it, a thunder-based fireball. It's a cool, unique thing that you could do. And like, I don't know, you have Burning Hands is a great low-level spell, but what if Burning Hands did lightning damage and it was like lightning fingers? I don't know, you could do so much fun stuff with this. And I really appreciate this a lot. I think it's really cool. I think it's pretty awesome stuff, to say the very least. Sorry, I'm sending another text. All right. All right. You can't get rid of components that are consumed. You can't remove the material components of a spell that consumes that component. Okay. Okay, so interesting. If it is so if it's a material component, but it's not consumed, it could be like a very expensive material component, but it's not consumed, you could get rid of that. Like there are some spells that like you have to have like I don't know, even identify, right? Identify has have a pearl worth 100 gold pieces to cast identify. You could remove the material component of identify because the pearl's not consumed. It's like that's a very low level version of it, but like it just saves you having to go out and find something like that. As long as the component's not consumed, you could just ditch that entirely, which is kind of interesting too. Chromatic Orb, yeah, that's another one, right? Where like you have the diamond, you need the diamond to cast Chromatic Orb, but if you were to modify, I mean, obviously at this point you have 4th level spells, so kind of maybe a pointless thing. But if you just learned Chromatic Orb and you're like, ah, damn, now I got to go search out a diamond to be able to cast it, and you could just be like, let me take I'm so suffused with magic, why don't I just get rid of that component? Blah, whatever you want to do. So anyway, how do you balance for this? I don't know, man. I think it's great. You just figure it out. I don't know. I think it's awesome. I'm on board. I mean, honestly, if you're really that worried about it, just don't shell out thousands of gold pieces to your party, because again, the arcane focus used for create spell is worth at least well, it's just interesting that it's worth at least, because I guess that means you could also, well, there's your balance factor, right? Worth at least 1,000 gold pieces per level of the spell altered by modify spell. It says worth at least. You could be like, turns out for me, it's 5,000 gold per thing, because it's a at least number. But either way, let's see. I read through and they're not giving sorcerers and warlocks the ability to choose spells after a long rest, but are still calling it prepare casting. All right, we'll get to that when we get there. All right, now that we're done geeking out over wizards, let's finish up the sorcerer spells. So we have Sorceress Burst, which is a new sorcerer cantrip. Range of 120 feet. I really like this. You make an ranged attack roll against a target. You roll a d6, or on a hit it takes a d6 damage. And if you roll a 6 on that d6, you roll another d6 and add it to the damage. So this has an exploding die mechanic. And whenever you cast the spell, the maximum number of d6s you cast is your spellcasting ability modifier. So potentially, on top of the base damage, you could get, like, with a 20 in your stat, exploding dice out to 5 more d6. But you also get to pick the damage type of either acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, psychic, or thunder. And when you get to cast it from higher levels, it's additional d6s. So what's really interesting is it's not choose a die. So if you're a 17th level sorcerer casting Sorceress Burst of the cantrip, you roll 4d6, and if any of those come up a d6, it explodes. It also is an attack roll, so if you crit, you roll more dice, and if any of those come up 6, they explode, and you can continue to explode to add additional damage, and I really like that a lot. I think it's pretty cool. And then you also get Sorceress Vitality at 3rd level, which is an action, which you can cast as a sorcerer to give yourself hit points equal to 2d6 plus your spellcasting ability modifier, and curing one of the following conditions on yourself: blinded, deafened, or poisoned. If you have any of the following conditions, they're ended: blinded, deafened, or poisoned. You could end all of them with a 3rd level spell here and give yourself a little healing. If you cast it with a 4th level or higher spell, the healing increases by a d6. And then you also have sort of a transformation spell called Sorcery Incarnate, which is a bonus action at 5th level, concentration up to a minute. You regain a d4 sorcery points, just flat out. And you get the following benefits. You can use 2 Metamagics on options of spell you cast, provided you have the sorcery points to do so, and advantage on attack rolls of every spell you cast, which is pretty cool. I like these a lot. The sorcerer spells are really awesome and unique, and there's even synergy between them, right? Sorcery Incarnate, followed, by a Sorceress Burst, because this is a bonus action, gives you attack advantage on attack rolls for spells you cast. Then Sorceress Burst is a cantrip, so you can cast that as your action. And then if you crit because you have advantage, you can do more damage and possibly explode the dice. Pretty interesting stuff. And then just giving the Sorcerer a flat-out inborn healing spell is kind of nice as well. Right, then we're going to move on to feats here. Let's see. Sorry, texts are coming through. And then we have some new epic boons. I don't love the epic boons, but they have made some of these better compared to their original versions. So a reminder now that all epic boons increase one of your ability scores by 1 to a maximum of 30, and then give you something else. So Dimensional Travel gives you, after you take the attack action or the magic action, you can teleport 30 feet, which is just a freebie thing that is not limited. Energy Resistance is resistance to 2 energy types of your choice, and you can change those out on a long rest. It also gives you Energy Redirection. When you take damage of a type which you have resistance, you can use your reaction to direct that damage towards another creature within 60 feet that isn't behind total cover. They must make a dexterity saving throw or take 2d12 plus your constitution modifier and damage. That's just a nice free extra thing as well. Irresistible Offense is you ignored bludgeoning, piercing, slashing resistance. And then if you roll a 20 on a d20 for an attack roll, you can deal extra damage to the target equal to the ability score increased by this feat. Equal to the score. So if you're at like a 26, it just does an extra 26 damage. Only once per turn. Epic Boon of Recovery. When you would hit 0 hit points, you drop to 1 instead and regain a number of hit points equal to half your maximum once per long rest. And I also like this when you're at 0 hit points. If you take damage, you don't fail a death saving throw. You can choose to make a death saving throw instead. And then, well, no, create spell. It's modify spell. No, but create spell. It's locked into your spell book forever. Pretty sure. Just scroll up and look. Let's see. Create spell. Yeah. Either way. Yeah, once it's in your spell book, it becomes one of your known spells. So. How do you get that stat? I'm actually very curious about how you're supposed to get it to a maximum of 30, as brought up there. Pretty interesting stuff. I don't know how you're going to do that, because this is the only way to get, with the exception of a couple of things that let you get bonuses above 20. This gives you +1. I thought it was +2 originally. Maybe they changed that again. It is hard to get it up to 30. Even they nerfed Barbarian used to give you +4 to strength and +4 to constitution. Now it only gives you +2. It's tricky. I guess a lot of those manuals and tomes that boost your stats. I guess. A DM can use bonus. Oh, here it is right here. A DM can use bonus feats as a form of advancement after characters reach 20th level to provide greater power. With this approach, every character gains 1 feat of their choice for every 30,000 XP they earn above 355,000 XP. Epic boon feats are especially appropriate for these. So I guess if you continue to keep playing at 20th level, you have the opportunity to get more of these, and that would be a way for you to slowly get bonuses to those, I guess. Where were we? Yeah, Epic Boon of Speed. As a bonus action, you can use the disengage action, and it also ends the grappled and restrained conditions on you, and increases your movement speed by 30 feet. Night Spirit is one dim light or darkness. You can go invisible. It ends if you take an action, bonus action, or reaction. Also, while in dim light or darkness, you have resistance to all damage except for force, psychic, and radiant. And then lastly, Weapon Master, which is a new one, which is probably more reasonable for a lot of us because you can take it at 4th level or above. Increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20, And then master property, your training with weapons allows you to use the master property of one kind of simple or martial weapon of your choice, provided you are proficient with it. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can change the kind of weapon you choose to another eligible kind. So I just want to check out one thing on create spell to make sure I'm not missing something. Create spell. It says it's concentration up to an hour, but that's just to activate this part. So I just double check it. Okay. Yeah. It's good. That's a good spell. I like it a lot. Okay. Moving on. We've done all of our spells. We've done all of the feats. Now we get into the classes. So if right up here, we're into Barbarian. So couple of changes. Some of them, I like them for the most part. I'm not crazy about one of the changes to Rage, but we'll talk about it. Rage damage is largely unchanged. Also, Rage does not ever become an unlimited number of times, if you've noticed that. And then you do get start with 2 and up to 4 weapon masteries, which is the new thing we were just talking about, the weapon mastery aspects. I do like these design notes that kind of give you some options here and talk about like what has changed and new things that have been added. Not too much is shifted in the base parts of the Barbarian. This is all pretty much the same: light armor, medium armor, etc. Now, sorry, I'm just gonna check one more thing here. Sorry. All right, so Rage. Couple of interesting things about Rage now. It's a bonus action to enter it, which is pretty much standard. It gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage, like it always did. It gives you extra damage, right, for weapon attacks or unarmed strikes using strength. Now, did you notice the difference there? It is weapon attacks with a weapon or an unarmed strike using strength that deals damage to a target. It does not limit it to melee weapons. So you can do your rage damage with thrown weapons now, which is pretty cool. I like that a lot. And then the damage is equal to the list in the table there. You have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. You can't maintain concentration or cast spells while raging, but that's pretty much always been standard. Now, here's the tricky part. It used to be you activate rage. It lasts for a minute. Unless, as long as you're like attacking, it will continue to last. So now, the rage lasts until the end of your next turn, and it ends early if you don heavy armor or are incapacitated. If your rage is still active on your next turn, you can extend the rage for another round by doing one or more of the following things: make an attack roll against an enemy, force an enemy to make a saving throw, or take a bonus action to extend your rage. So I like this. It's saying like if you activate it, as long as you attack or force a saving throw, which could be something like grappling or shoving, or just take a bonus action to extend it. So no more do you have to have like your allies hit you or an enemy try to hit you to keep your rage up. You could just choose to extend it with a bonus action. And they said in the design aspect, this is more about having it be in your control. These are things that you do, not things that are done to you. And now you can also maintain that rage for up to 10 minutes. Normally it was just a minute long. Now, as long as things keep going, you can continue to maintain that rage. And I'm wondering if that's why they made it not unlimited number of rages at 20th level, because potentially that would be 6 rages at 10 minutes long. So that's maybe why it's not just unlimited now. And you can enter your rage a number of times shown on the table. You get them all back when you finish a long rest. All right. Unarmored defense is pretty much unchanged. 10 plus dexterity plus constitution modifier. Shields still work. Now you get the weapon mastery option. 2 kinds of simple or martial weapons. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can practice weapon drills and change the weapons that you choose. And then you'll get more as you level up to a total of 4. Now you get primal knowledge at 2nd level. You get proficiency in another skill of your choice from the list of barbarian skills. And while rage is active, whenever you make an ability check for one of those skills, you can use strength instead. Now, for some of these, it makes sense, like strength for acrobatics, strength for intimidation, but my favorite is a strength perception check. I am so rageful, I'm better at seeing things. Now, I'm not ever one to really question weird mechanical choices. I'm fine with it. It does go on to say, when you use this ability, that your strength represents primal power coursing through and around you, and I'm fine with that. I just think it's funny that I'm so angry I can see things better, which will never not be funny to me. All right, reckless attack. Another important note for reckless attack. When you make your first attack roll on your turn, you can decide to attack recklessly. Doing so gives you advantage on attack rolls using strength during this turn, but attack rolls against you have advantage until the start of your next turn. However, reckless attack now also works at ranged as well. It is when you make an attack roll using strength. So you can recklessly throw javelins, but because it's advantage, you can now counteract the long range of thrown weapons and just have it be a straight roll if you want, and it would still benefit from your rage damage. And that always made sense to me, that if I'm throwing something with my physical strength so hard and I'm already angry and raging, it should still benefit from those things, and now it does, which I like. I think that that's pretty cool to see that now you have access to, you're not just limited purely to melee. You can do things like using this with, again, javelins, hand axes, whatever you want to use. I like that. I didn't even realize stealth was in there. I'm so angry that I'm quiet. That's funny too. All right, subclass at 3rd level, feat at 4th level, extra attack at 5th level, fast movement for an extra 10 feet while not wearing heavy armor, also at 5th level. 7th level is now called Feral Instinct, and this just gives you, they remove Danger Sense and combined it with Feral Instinct, so advantage on initiative rolls and dexterity saving throws. That's an always on dexterity saving throws. You don't have to be able to see it now, just always on. We have Indomitable Might at 9th level, which they like that they move this up. If your total for a strength check is less than your strength score, you can use your score in place of that total, which is much more useful at 9th level, and I like that a lot. So if you have a 20 strength score at 9th level, your lowest score for any strength check you make will be 20. Again, it could be higher depending on if you have expertise or something in athletics or whatever, but your base floor would be 20. Brutal Critical, interesting changes, and I think I'm for it. Right? When you score a critical hit with a weapon or an unarmed strike using strength, the target takes extra damage equal to your Barbarian level. It used to be dice, right? And it had that funky aspect of, it's like extra dice on top of things, but it's not dice that can double on a crit because it's already part of a critical. Now it's just a flat out damage buff. So when you get it, if you crit, you're just doing an extra 11 damage. And because it's a weapon using strength, you could, again, throw a javelin and crit, and Brutal Critical will benefit from that. The ultimate damage ceiling has decreased because, it was, 3 extra damage dice, so you could potentially, if you roll very well, do a lot of damage. But now it's just a flat 11 damage, and that will just increase each level. And it's not limited to a number of times per turn. So if you crit twice in a row, you're just doing an extra 22 damage on those 2 hits if you have this at 11th level. I think I like that a lot. Reminder, too, do not forget that you have weapon mastery. And we talked about this. So if you are a great axe or great sword wielding barbarian, which, you have all the benefits of Brutal Critical and all that, but even if you miss, you have the graze property on your greatsword, which does damage equal to your, oh wait, hang on. Let's see, this might be interesting. When you make an attack, hold on. Okay, graze is even if you miss the target, you still deal damage to the target equal to your ability modifier. Now, if you look at rage, when you make an attack with a weapon or unarmed strike using strength and deal damage to the target, you get the rage damage. So according to what I'm reading, if you are a great sword wielding barbarian with the graze capability and you miss, you'll still apply your rage damage to the graze damage because you made an attack with a strength-based weapon and also dealt damage. Nowhere in here does it say you have to hit them with the attack when you make an attack and deal damage. So that just works, which is awesome. So potentially, if you have a 20 in your strength and your whatever level barbarian gets +4 rage damage at 16th level. So if you're a barbarian of 16th level and you have a 20 strength and the graze ability on your greatsword, you could be dealing a minimum 18 points of damage a turn by missing both attacks, which means you could possibly forgo reckless attack, because if you don't want to try to fish for the crit, you're like, well, my base damage is 18 a turn no matter what, which is pretty cool, to be honest with you. I'm not saying graze damage can be increased. Does it say that it can't be increased? We're not increasing the damage, are we? Let's look. Let's go look. Is that what it says? Can't be increased in any way? That's dumb. I don't like it. I'm going to change that in my game. All right, we're going to have to check back. I saw some of your comments. That's pretty funny. Let's check. You can deal damage. This damage is the same type, and damage can't be increased other than increasing the ability modifier. That's dumb. I don't like that. I changed my mind on Graze. It's good, but I don't like it as much now that I can't increase my floor damage. I'm going to allow that in my game. We'll see how it goes. But either way, another point to make would also be Cleave. So if Graze doesn't work as written, that could also change, right? It's playtest. But Cleave, you'd still get the rage damage on Cleave if you chose to go Great Axe instead. I'm a little bummed about Graze. That sucks. That would have been so cool. Damn it, Wizards, why are you thinking ahead at my potential breaks for your game? That makes me mad. I really want that to work. Well, that's the benefit of homebrewing things, right? You can just do that if you want. But Cleave also, as a point, right? Cleave, normally it says when you hit a second attack, you don't add your ability modifier to it, but you would still add your rage damage to Cleave. I'm a little crestfallen from Graze not working in that aspect, but either way. But again, potentially Cleave might be the better move overall, because that's more potential chances to hit with the options of things like or reckless attack happening, possibly giving you an extra attack. And then again, options for extra damage from brutal critical. Man, I'm so bummed about that. All right. 13th, you get persistent rage. Your rage is so fierce that it now lasts for 10 minutes without you needing to do anything. It still ends if you're incapacitated or don heavy armor. So now you just get flat out 10-minute rage. Somebody also brought it up because while raging, you have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. And then also Primal Knowledge makes, you can make a strength check as any of these. So you could be so angry that you're quiet with advantage on your strength check. So essentially, while raging, it actually almost benefits you too now to rage outside of combat, because while raging, you have advantage on strength checks. So you could have advantage on perception checks as long as you're raging because of the way Primal Knowledge interacts with rage. Because, yeah, it says you can make, we'll read that again, you can make it as a strength check, even if it normally uses a different ability, which, while rage is active, strength checks have advantage. So that's some pretty cool out-of-combat utility for rage. Rage infiltration mission. Yeah, right? All right, so persistent rage is at 13th level. Now we get relentless rage at 15th level. This is pretty much what we know from before, right? If you drop to 0 hit points while your rage is active and don't die outright, you can make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw. If you succeed, your hit points instead change to a... Whoa, hold on. If you succeed, your hit points instead change to a number equal to twice your Barbarian level? That's new. Never mind. I thought it was the same. Normally, it's like you go to 1 hit point instead. So if I'm at 15th level and I take damage that drops me to 0 and I don't get knocked out, I can make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw, which I might be able to automatically succeed by 15th level. And instead, I pop up with 30 hit points. Then each time this feature is used after the first, the DC increases by 15. to a DC 15 and then 20. When you finish a short or long rest, when you finish a short or long rest, the DC resets to 10. So previously, okay, so I guess I could take a short rest and then my DC goes back down to 10, but I still would pop up. The number of hit points I pop back up to is still twice my Barbarian level. That's like so much more survivability there. Especially if you pop into a rage and have resistance, 30 hit points could be a lot. Interesting. Yeah, I know, Pedro. What do you want from me? There's a lot. Listen, there's a lot going on here, right? I mean, we got a lot to go through. There's a lot of commentary. This is why this is not the TL. This is not the TLDR version. Okay. Rage Resurgence at 17th level, also really powerful, right? Whenever you roll initiative, you regain 1 use of your rage, which is also probably, again, part of the reason why it's not unlimited. Whenever you get into a fight, you're going to have 1 rage no matter what. Primal Champion was, as with all 20th level abilities, have been brought down to 18th level. I am a little bummed to see that it used to be a +4 to your strength and constitution, increasing the maximum to 24. It's now 2 to a maximum of 22. Kind of a bummer, but whatever. And then at 20th level, choose your strength or constitution score. The score increases by 2. You gain an epic boon of... Well, I guess that's the other thing, right? You get the +2 to your ability score of your choice at 20th level, and an epic boon, which could also potentially increase it by 1 more. So I guess that's maybe why. Yeah, there's a lot of power here. And then we move on to the Berserker. And I do like a lot of the changes they made to the Berserker. I feel it's very strong. And they made a lot of good points in what they had said. That, like, Frenzy, like, because you now you could use your bonus action to maintain your rage, using your bonus action to activate Frenzy kind of seems weird. So, you can go into a Frenzy in battle. If you use Reckless Attack while your rage is active, you deal extra damage to the first target you hit on your turn with a strength-based attack. To determine the extra damage, roll a number of d6s equal to your rage damage bonus and add them together. This is such a clean fix to this, because it essentially, instead of giving you another attack, this just gives you extra damage. So you're like, whenever you're in a rage and you use Reckless Attack, so say you're at level 3, your rage damage is a +2. You hit somebody with a strength-based attack, you could roll an extra 2d6 damage on top of whatever base damage you're doing, which is pretty cool. Which I think also doubles on a crit. So even if you are at 3rd level and you are using a greatsword, let's say, and you hit somebody and you crit, you do 2d6 base damage from the greatsword, another 2d6 for the critical damage, plus your strength modifier, plus the +2 damage for your rage bonus, and then 4 extra d6 on top of that for the frenzy damage, because it's 2d6 and those dice would be doubled. So you could potentially, at level 3, deal a fireball's worth of damage to a single target. And if you could manage to somehow do that again on the next hit, well, you'd only have 1 hit at 3rd level, but if you did it at 5th level, you could potentially be doing even more damage. I think that's pretty cool. I like it. It's very clean. And I like that it's repurposing existing abilities to be useful. All right, at 6th level, you get Mindless Rage. You have immunity to the Charmed and Frightened condition while your rage is active. If you're charmed or frightened when you enter rage, the condition ends on you. This is much cleaner. It doesn't suspend it. It's just gone. Would it work with reaction attacks? You can't trigger Reckless Attack. You can only trigger Reckless Attack on your turn. If somebody had something that, if you had an ability... Oh, hang on. Hold. 10th level is Retaliation. When you take damage from a creature that is within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to make 1 melee attack against that creature using a weapon or an unarmed strike. So if somebody hits you, you can hit him back. Now, somebody in the chat had said, but would it work on reaction attacks? Potentially, if it happens on your turn. So, Reckless attack cannot be active not on your turn. It's when you're on your turn, you choose to activate reckless attack. Just double check that that hasn't changed. I'm pretty sure that's what it says. When you make your first attack on your turn, you could choose to be reckless. Now, if the enemy you're fighting has some sort of ability that does damage to you while they're within 5 feet of you, then yes, reckless attack could work on a reaction. So picture this, right? You are fighting a creature that does reactionary fire damage to you. You hit the thing with your axe. You're a frenzied barbarian. You hit him. You deal your extra 2d6 or however many d6s worth of damage because you hit him while you use reckless attack while raging. Their ability does fire damage to you if you're within 5 feet of them. Retaliation states that when you take damage from a creature that is within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to make a melee attack against that creature. That creature was within 5 feet of you, and you took damage from it. There is nothing stopping you from using a reaction on your own turn. So you could then reactionary attack this thing with retaliation if you're a high enough level, and then follow up with your second attack from extra attack, potentially having 3 attacks in a turn, all benefit from reckless attack, and do those extra d6s of damage equal to your rage damage modifier. Potentially. If that were to trigger. Is it once per turn? I don't think so. No. Right? If you use reckless attack while your rage is active, you deal extra damage to the... was it the first target you hit on your turn? Damn it! God damn it, Wizards of the Coast. It's just the first target you hit on your turn. Oh, I hate all of this. Never mind. I'm not as excited about it anymore. I realize that all the stuff I'm talking about is like game-breakingly OP, but I'm just getting so excited when I read it. But to the first target you hit on your turn. So it wouldn't work with all of the things I'm talking about. It would just work once. Redact that. To determine the extra damage, roll a number of d6s. Yeah. So it's only on one attack, which is a bummer. Especially because, like, if you hit the first one normally and then you crit on the second one, it wouldn't get the extra damage dice. Thank you, chat, for correcting me. This is why I do this in a live stream instead of myself in a standalone video, because now when I make the TLDR version, I can cut out all of my mistakes and make a nice, clean video. All right. And we'll move on. Intimidating Presence as the 14th level. I still don't like that Intimidating Presence is an action. But Strict Terror into enemies around you. I do like that they gave it a rage interaction, right? Each creature of your choice within 30 feet of you, or 60 feet, if your rage is active, must make a wisdom saving throw based on your strength modifier, provided they're not behind total cover. On a failure, they are frightened of you, have the frightened condition for 1 minute, and at the end of each of the frightened creature's turn, they can repeat the saving throw, ending the effect on a success. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. If you've run out of uses of this feature, you can expend a use of your rage, choosing not to activate the rage and activating Intimidating Presence instead. Yeah, you can't use it until you finish a long rest, or you could just expend a rage use to just activate this. I don't see why you would ever do that. Also, the fact that it is an action, like, I feel like it has limited use. Like, more often than not, I would rather bonus action rage and attack somebody than try to frighten them. Intimidating Presence could be useful. You know, it has potential battlefield control capabilities to it. So I'm not, ruling it out completely. But Mindless Rage, definite improvement. Retaliation is great. And then Frenzy, it's better, but it only works once a turn. But then again, I get the reasoning why. So I retract my statement before. Frenzy was once a turn. You could make an extra attack, but it gave you the offset of exhaustion. This is now saying, like, when you hit while using reckless attack, you can deal extra damage. It starts off at 2d6, potentially all the way up to 4d6, possibly outclassing what you could have rolled if you were to just make an extra attack with the original Frenzy. And it's kind of just like an always on thing that happens. So, yeah, I think that it's, you don't have to deal with breaking action economy. You don't have to deal with exhaustion, and you just get to do just flat out do extra damage, which is almost the equivalency of another attack. Yes, later on when you have brutal critical and things like that, potentially an extra attack could be more useful because it's another opportunity to fish for crits. I think I like it overall. I understand why it's not on every attack, because that would be stupidly OP. I've talked myself out of it, as I'm sure you can tell. But that makes me wonder, what if it was just like a d6 damage per hit? Would that be too much? Like, so that, instead of doing 2d6 on one hit, it was like a d6 per hit, or half of your rage damage modifier, you know what I mean? Like a d6 up until what, or however it would be, potentially capping out at 2d6 per hit at 16th level. Would that be too much? I don't know. I think I'm okay with it. I get why they did it. It's a lot cleaner. And my version of it that I made in my head would have been way OP. So I get it. We've tempered ourselves here. We're learning. You know what? I haven't had lunch either, folks. So I'm very hungry. So my brain is not working at full capacity here. All right, let's go check out what you guys are saying in the chat here and take a little break from my own head. What about the same creature multiple times for the first target? I don't think that's how it's read. I get what you're saying. Like, if it's the first time I hit this target, what if I hit this target? Could I do it again? I don't think it's designed that way. It's when you deal extra damage to the first target you hit. Yeah. So it's not like that would be a clever way to try to get around it, like loophole wise. Like, I hit this person, and then this is also my first target. But yeah. Listen, all right. I like high power games. I'm all aboard for that. But yeah. So no, I'm pretty sure it's just meant to be a once per turn thing, which is, again, the concept. Like I said, it's meant to replicate or remove the concept. I think they even said it here. Right? No longer causes you to gain a level of exhaustion. In addition, it causes you to deal extra damage each round that you use Reckless Attack instead of giving you a bonus action attack, which conflicts with Rage's use of bonus action. So that was their thought process. It just gives you extra damage to kind of sort of be another attack without it actually having to be another attack. It also gives you less opportunities, again, for fishing for crits, which could break the damage if you were to have brutal critical. So they're just like, here's some extra free damage for using Reckless Attack whenever you rage. And it makes sense, right? Reckless Attack, you're frenzied. There's through lines there, and I get it. But either way, I think it's better. My wife, thank you, Redoubtable Rob, she is at work in the office, and she's actually having a pretty rough day today. So while it would be lovely of her to bring me chicken nuggets, she's not home, so that is not an option. So the options are I order some food, or I try to find something in the house to make. But thank you. Anyway, let's go on to our next class here, which is the Fighter. So you'll notice Second Wind has been increased, where we now go from 2 uses of Second Wind at first level, which is obviously an improvement over the singular use. And then we also have more weapon masteries, right? So the Barbarian started off with 2 and ended up with 4. The Fighter starts off with 3 and ends up with 5. Also, notice how there's really no dead levels here, right? Also, can we talk about how at 4th level and 5th level you get a feat back to back? That's some 3rd edition shit, and I love it. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to skip over all of this bits because we're going to just get into it. Most of the original stuff here, hit points, proficiencies, all that remains the same. First level, you get a fighting style. Pretty standard, right? The fighting style, defense feat, or another fighting style feat of your choice. Second level, you get Second Wind, which is still a bonus action and a d10 plus your fighter level, but you now get 2 uses of it at first level, and you get all expended uses back when you finish a long rest. Unfortunately, that's the trade-off. You used to get it back on a short rest, but you only had 1. Now you get it twice and potentially up to, was it 4 or 5 times? 4 times, but it's per long rest. How do you feel about that? Do you prefer it to be the 1 time per short rest, or potentially the 2 to 4 times per long rest? And it says when you reach certain levels, you get more. Let's see. I guess it comes down to how frequently you use short rests, right? If they're not really phasing out short rests entirely, but for example, warlocks no longer get their spell slots back on a short rest because they have actual spell slots now. But let's keep going. Weapon mastery, we talked about that. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can change the type of weapons, which I do like the versatility of that. You get action surge at 2nd level. Action surge, however, has been nerfed in that there's no reason for a spellcaster to necessarily go for it, because you used to obviously be able to cast 2 spells in a turn, right? Cast a spell, action surge, cast another spell. It has now been changed to that you can get an additional action, but you can only choose from attack, dash, disengage, or dodge. You cannot use action surge to cast a spell and then do something else. Now, if you did have attacking capabilities, you could potentially use your magic action as your base action and then action surge attack, but you couldn't cast a spell, then action surge and cast another spell. I get it. It was a funky aspect of 5th edition. A lot of people really liked it, myself included, I'll be honest. But I get the reasoning and the understanding of the changing of it. It makes sense to me. How do you guys feel about that? The no longer double spells per turn. I'm sure that's also could potentially be an issue with a lot of DMs of people being able to sling 2 action spells a turn. But nice to see that action surge still comes back on a short rest, not a long rest, which is nice. Okay. Feat at 4th level, extra attack at 5th level, feat also at 5th level, so back-to-back feats, 4th and 5th. Weapon expert, which is the unique thing to fighter here at 7th level. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can choose one of the kinds of mastery weapons you're using and replace its mastery property with another mastery property. The chosen kind of weapon must qualify for the new property. For example, you could replace the longsword's flex property with the push property. This property applies for only you, not for others, and the change ends when you finish a long rest. So this is what we were talking about earlier, where you could take certain things and swap them around, right? You could put cleave on a great sword. You could put graze on a great axe. There's a lot of interesting opportunities with what you could do. Putting push on a longbow so you could shoot multiple times a turn without having to worry about the loading property and knock somebody off a cliff. A lot of interesting stuff like that. And that's at 7th level. You get this opportunity to swap out the masteries. That's a ton of interesting tactical versatility for the fighter, which I like. 9th, you get Indomitable, which has a slight change to it. If you fail a saving throw, you can re-roll it with a bonus equal to your fighter level. Previously, when you had Indomitable, you would just roll, re-roll, and hope for the best. It is only 1 use, and you only get it once per long rest, but when you get it, it immediately gets a +9 bonus, so use it when you really need to. 2 extra attacks at 11th level. Then you get Weapon Adept at 13th level. When you use your Weapon Expert feature, which is the one we just talked about before, you can give that kind of weapon 2 properties rather than 1. But when you can, then you only use 1 property at a time. Whenever you make an attack roll against a target with that kind of weapon, you decide which of the 2 properties applies to that attack. You must make this decision before the attack hits or misses. I get it, because you could technically put like cleave and graze on the same weapon, and you're like, well, if I hit, I'll use cleave, but if I miss, I'll use graze. So you have to decide before the attack hits or misses. So I don't know, like, it's before an attack hits or misses, so I assume that's supposed to be before you roll the die, not like you roll the die and you're like, well, I got a 3, so I'm going to use graze. Like, it doesn't say it's after the roll. Whenever you make an attack roll, I don't know. You could debate about how that works. For example, you could apply the push and topple properties to a longsword, and whenever you hit a target with a longsword, you decide which of those properties... Oh, wait a minute. Huh. Does that directly contradict itself? Whenever you make an attack roll against a target with that kind of weapon, you decide which of the 2 properties applies to the attack. You can make this decision before the attack hits or misses. For example, you could apply the push and topple properties to longswords, and whenever you hit a target with a longsword, you decide which of those properties to use against the target. Does it? Yeah, that's a grammatical error, but that directly contradicts itself. Make it before the attack hits or misses. When you hit with a longsword, you decide. I prefer the latter of, like, you give it to, so I mean, that would really depend on the weapon, so I understand why, right? Like, so push and topple are both triggered on hits. You apply push and topple to the longsword, you hit with it, and you just say, hey, okay, well, it's more beneficial if I knock him prone, so I'm going to knock him prone. Whereas, like, push, also could work. It just depends on what's useful. In that instance where you choose when you hit, that makes sense. The problem you run into is, like I said, something with, like, cleave or graze, where it's like, well, if I miss, I can still do damage, or if I hit, I can possibly hit something else. So I don't really know how that works. They're going to have to clean that up. That'll be part of my suggestion when the survey comes out, is like, what is it actually supposed to be? All right, moving on. We get Unconquerable at 17th level. Improved Action Surge at 15th, you get it twice. Inconquerable at 17th level. If you fail a saving throw and your Indomitable feature is expended, you can use it again by using Second Wind, which also heals you, which is pretty nice. So use Indomitable when you need it at 17th level. If you still have Second Wind uses, you can still get the heal from Second Wind, and then also the reroll of the failed saving throw with at least at 17 with a plus 17 bonus to it, which is pretty nuts. 3 extra attacks now comes at 18th level, because remember everything that was at 20th has come down, and then the epic boon again at 20th level. And they put in the champion fighter as the base fighter here, so let's see what's different about that. Adaptable Victor at 3rd level. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can gain proficiency in 1 skill from those available to this class at 1st level. As you remind yourself of past lessons, this proficiency lasts until your next long rest. So just a little skill versatility there. Improved critical for weapons and unarmed strikes. You crit on a 19 or a 20 at 3rd level. At 6th level, you get another fighting style feat, which is standard. That's what it had before. You also get Heroic Warrior at 6th level, which is once per combat, you can give yourself heroic advantage if you start your turn without it. Again, heroic advantage is kind of like the new name for inspiration. So if you start once per combat, if you start your turn without advantage or inspiration, for lack of a better term, you can choose to give yourself that, possibly triggering advantage if you would like to use it, which is pretty nice. I like that, because you can get advantage or inspiration from one method, and then the next turn give yourself it if you didn't have it before. 10th level, you get Superior Critical, which is now critting on an 18 to 20 on weapons or unarmed strikes. And at 14th level, you get Survivor. Advantage on death saving throws, and if you roll an 18, 19, or 20 on your death saving throw, it counts as a 20, so you get the hit point and you pop back up. And then also Heroic Rally. At the start of each of your turns, you get hit points equal to 5 plus your Constitution modifier if you have no more than half your hit points left. It doesn't work if you have 0 hit points, but you're just getting free HP every turn when you're below half. And that is it for the fighter. Champion is still very simplistic. It's useful stuff, right? A little versatility here, a little bit of extra damage potentially for the extra crits, but you actually get a lot more from the base fighter class now with the weapon mastery, weapon expert, different options like that. So I do like that. That's pretty cool overall, in my opinion. Let's see. All right, moving on to the Sorcerer. All right, so now we're going to have to look at this because you can see it has all the spell slots and it has prepared spells, goes from 2 to 22. So significantly more spells than a Sorcerer had before. We also have our cantrips and our sorcery points. Let's dive into this. Still a D6 hit points, Constitution, Charisma, simple weapon proficiency. You have all simple weapons. Okay. First level, you get innate sorcery. You always have the Sorceress Burst and Chaos spells prepared. That's in above the ones that you'd have normally. Okay? Spell casting. Your cantrips. Well, let's see what people were saying. Some stuff that was interesting. The Sorcerer table shows how many spell slots you have to cast your spells at first level or higher. Okay? You gain all spell slots back when you finish a long rest. Prepared spells of first level or higher. You prepare the list of spells of first level and higher that are available for you when you cast. Choose 2 first level spells. The number of spells on your list also increases as you gain sorcerer levels, as shown in the prepared spells column. Whenever that number increases, choose additional spells from the arcane spell list until the number of spells on your list matches the number on the table. The chosen spells must be of a level for which you have spell slots. For example, if you're a 3rd level sorcerer, your list of prepared spells can include 6 arcane spells of 1st level or 2nd level in any combination. Huh. Interesting. Okay. If another sorcerer feature, such as innate sorcery, gives spells that you always have prepared, those don't count. Okay. Interesting. Whenever you gain a sorcerer level, you can prepare one spell on your list with another arcane spell for which you have spell slots. Ah, okay. So this is the uniqueness of being a sorcerer. I wonder if Bard's going to get the change too. So, if you recall, unless they're going to change it for everything, which we'll look as we go further on, the way clerics, paladins, and druids worked was, and I think Bards at the time, was at 1st level, you could had your whole spell list, right, of all the spells you had potentially available to you, and you could prepare. You would basically prepare per your slots. So on a long rest, if you were a 7th level cleric, and you take a long rest, you'd prepare 4 1st level spells, 3 2nd level spells, 3 3rd level spells, and a 4th level spell. And that's just how it was. You'd have your whole list, and you could swap them out, but you couldn't choose to be like, hey, I'm going to prepare a bunch more 2nd level spells than 1st level spells because I think they're more useful to me. You were locked into whatever the list is. So for, again, a 7th level cleric, paladin, or cleric or druid, it'd be okay. You have your whole list. You can swap it on a long rest. 4 first, 3 second, 3 third, 1 fourth, and that's what you prepare and what you could cast. And that's just kind of how that was locked. This is different because, for example, if you're a 3rd level sorcerer, your list includes 6 prepared arcane spells, right? It says 4 2nd level and 4 1st level, 2 2nd level, and you have 6 total prepared spells. You can choose any combination of 1st and 2nd level spells. Whereas if you were a cleric or a druid, you would have to prepare 4 1st level spells and 2 2nd level spells. As a sorcerer, you prepare any combination of that equals 6. Now, again, it's not exactly that, right? Because if you were to scroll up and look, right, at 1st level, you'd prepare 2 spells, which would be 2 1st level spells. At 2nd level, you prepare 4 spells, which would be 4 1st level spells, because that's all you had access to. But then at 6th level, you could go either way, right? But then at 7th level, when it's 4 1st level spells and 3 2nd level spells, you could prepare more, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? You could go more 1st, you could go more 2nd. You have a little versatility there. And then the concept of you being able to swap them out too, right? When you gain whenever you gain a level, you can swap an arcane spell with a different spell on your list. So you have slightly more versatility. Like you could have more of a higher level spell slot prepared than like a cleric could. It is how clerics work in the playtest, Zarsla. That's how it works in the playtest. So, all right. So let's go through up to 4th level here, right? 1st level, you have 2 spell slots and 2 spells prepared. 2nd level, you have 3 spell slots and 4 1st level spells prepared. At 6th level, you already have 4 1st level spells prepared, and now you have 6. You could keep those first 4 that you had at a 1st level and have 2 2nd level spells prepared, or swap one and then you could have 3 and 3. As it stands currently in the playtest, at 3rd level as a sorcerer, you could have 3 1st level spells prepared and 3 2nd level spells prepared. Clerics and druids can't do that right now. At least per the last playtest, that was not an option for them. So right there, you could have the difference of being 3 and 3 if you wanted. And then you can kind of get the opportunity of how you could switch this up and possibly prepare more higher level spells. Like if you were to go down here to a 20th level, you have 9th level spells here at 17th level. When you get another spell at 18th level, you could prepare 2 9th level spells if you wanted, or 3 9th level spells prepared. Again, we'll look at what the wizard is when we get to the wizard. But the way it was for clerics and druids in the playtest, you were preparing per the spell slot per level list. So a little bit of versatility there. There you go. Moving on. It's charisma. You can use an arcane spell focus. No, hold on, people on the internet who are saying things. Let's take a look. A sorcerer, thank you, internet, had 15 spells prepared at level 20 in 5e. You now have 22. 7 more spells prepared. That's a pretty big number, all right, to give you 7 more total spells prepared. So don't tell me nothing changed, because things did change. They increased the number of prepared spells, right? Look, it was 2, 3, 4, 5. They were spells known. Now it's 2, 4, 6, right? So there's changes there. There's an increase in the overall number of spells. They're calling them spells prepared. They were called spells known previously. Calling it prepared is a weird option in my mind because everybody else considers prepared casters to be things like clerics and druids and so on. But that's a change. That's an improvement overall. I think we can all agree. Having 7 more spells in your repertoire, not including Chaos Bolt, which is a freebie now, is a win for the sorcerers, which is something that I always brought up, and people never seem when I said I hated sorcerers in 5th edition because they were weak. Because look, from 17th level on, you had 15 spells prepared. 15, 15, 15, 15, right? All the way up. Now, can I remind you that the Ranger in 5th edition had 11 spells prepared at 20th level, unless you were to go with something like one of these other new ones that got an additional 5 spells. So a Fey Wanderer Ranger in base 5th edition at 20th level had 16 spells prepared. 1 more spell than the Sorcerer. Just throw that out there, right? And I didn't get into what we're going to talk about here in a second. So let's keep going. But I just wanted to bring that up because that's a big shift, right? 7 more spells prepared. And now you're automatically better than the Ranger in that aspect because previously Rangers had more spells than the Sorcerer, which I always thought was weird as one of the pinnacle magical casting classes. Like Rangers were better than you. So were Paladins innately, right? If you had a 20 charisma, you were preparing 15 spells at high levels as a Paladin, right? Or a Wizard was preparing 25 spells and you were preparing 15 for an arbitrary reason. Or, spells known, but either way. Let's read the design notes. Okay. Yeah, the Sorcerer giving more spells to the Sorcerer, now capping at 15 or 22 rather than 15. This is one of the most requested changes to the class. Right there. So, that's what I'm saying. It says it right there. All right, moving on. So, then we get on to Font of Magic, which is this thing that sorcerers always had at 2nd level, which is kind of the swap your sorcery points to get spell slots back. Okay. You have 2 sorcery points. You get more as you level up. You get them back on a long rest. You can use your sorcery points to gain additional spell slots or sacrifice them to gain additional sorcery points. Converting a spell slot to sorcery points as a bonus action, you can expend 1 spell slot to gain a number of sorcery points equal to the spell slot's level. And then it has this sort of table here. Now, I am curious. Did that change? I didn't actually look. Again, I don't play Sorcerer, so I don't know. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 minimum. Yeah, so it's the same. Okay. You can no higher than 5th level. I think there's no higher than 5th level. Okay, yeah. And you any spell slot you create ends when you finish a long rest. So that's pretty much the same. All right, you also get Metamagic at 2nd level now as opposed to getting it at 3rd level. Again, the concept behind a lot of this is they wanted to give the Sorcerer its sort of own identity before you choose a subclass. So that's why we're getting things like Metamagic at 2nd level, and this innate sorcery where we get Sorceress Burst and Chaos Bolt for free at 1st level. Again, you also, let's see, because you get 3 Metamagic options here as opposed to 2. You can only use 1 Metamagic option per spell cast unless otherwise noted, and you get them back when you finish long rest. Or when you finish a long rest, rather, you can replace one of your Metamagic options with one you don't know. So a lot more versatility there as well. You get your subclass at 3rd level. You get Sorceress Vitality at 5th level. That's the ability to heal yourself by that new unique spell, which is now auto-prepared for you, which now puts you at 24 spells prepared, right? Because you got Chaos Bolt at level 1. Arcane Interruption at 7th level, which will now put you at, 25 spells, right? Because 22 plus 1, 2, 3. Sorcery Incarnate spell at 9th level, adding you another one here, 26 spells prepared. Additional Metamagic comes in here, I think is at 13th level, right? You get 3 more Metamagic options at a big chunk, so now you're at 6. Sorceress Restoration, huge benefit of this. When you finish, you gain 4 sorcery points back when you roll initiative or finish a short rest. I like that they added in both, because I think it used to just be when you rolled initiative or something like that. Now it's roll initiative or short rest. That's a nice change. And then Arcane Apotheosis, which is really nuts here. You get the Wish spell prepared. So we're at, 27 spells auto-prepared here? You always have the Wish spell prepared. And if you undergo the spell's casting stress, you have no chance of losing the ability to cast the spell. This is kind of the whole wild magic craziness aspect, right? In addition, when you cast the Wish spell to replicate a spell of 1st through 8th level without expending a 9th level spell slot, you can cast it without expending a 9th level spell slot. You instead expend a slot of the replicated spell's level. Once you use Wish in this way, you can't do it until you finish a long rest. So again, I'm going to cast Wish to replicate Spirit Guardians, a 3rd level spell. Instead of using my Wish to cast that 3rd level spell, I just cast a 3rd level spell slot to cast Spirit Guardians. I also now have pretty much access to all spells for like a one-shot, one-off here. Yes, you can change Metamagics at a long rest. One of them, anyway. I think it's just one. Replace one of your Metamagic options with a different one. And you have a total of 6 now. And Arcane Apotheosis, pretty nuts. And then again, Epic Boon at 20th level. Yeah, we're stuck. You're not going to get to spell points, unfortunately. Yeah, it's Wish, but better, right? It's Wish, always auto-prepared, and no downside of ever losing the ability to cast Wish. And then once per long rest, when you use it to replicate any lower level spell, you don't use the 9th level slot. So you can use Wish to cast any spell from any spell list, right? That's pretty sure that's how Wish works. And then you can also still use Wish for its 9th level capability as well on the same day, if you'd like, at 18th level. So, big shifts in the Sorcerer power scheme. And I'm a big fan. Because I always used to really like Sorcerers. Because in 3.5, I liked the concept of spells known more than spells prepared. Because I liked having, like, this is my set list. I know what I have. I don't have to sit there. And that was partially because of the way they did prepared spells in older editions, where, like, you'd have to pick, like, I'm going to prepare Cure Wounds 3 times to cast it 3 times. Not just preparing it once and then using my spell slots. So known spells were something I was always more of a fan of. And then I really just disliked, again, just the number of spells known from Sorcerers really bummed me out. And now that's been fixed. And they've given them a lot of cool other stuff. Also, for the first time in a while, you have unique spells to Sorcerer, which is, again, normally not something you have, because usually most of the unique spells were granted to Wizards. Now you've got a whole bunch of things that only Sorcerers can do, which is adding identity, which was the whole concept, right? Giving them something unique. So I like it. You cast Wish with a 3rd level slot, but not really, right? It's only when you're replicating a lower level spell. But the benefit is, like, so say I don't normally have access to Cure Wounds. Let's go to the top, because I'm pretty sure Wish says it's of any spell, but I just want to double check before I put my foot in my mouth. Okay. The basis of duplicate any other spell of 8th level or lower. So let's say the party's really hurting and you want to cast Mass Cure Wounds, but you're a sorcerer, you don't have access to Mass Cure Wounds. You could use Arcane Apotheosis to have Wish replicate Mass Cure Wounds, and then use a 5th level slot instead of using your 9th level slot to cast Wish to cast Mass Cure Wounds, which is a 5th level spell. You say, I'm going to use Arcane Apotheosis and have Wish duplicate Mass Cure Wounds, and then cast it, but you would use the 5th level slot instead of using your 9th level slot for that. Once per long rest, but you'd still have your 9th level slot, and you could use Wish or any other 9th level spell you'd want. So there you go. No, it wouldn't be a 9th level counter spell, but only a 3rd slot. It's I don't think so. Or maybe it would be, right? You cast Wish to duplicate a spell of a lower level without expending a 9th level slot. Yeah, that's a question, right? Or if I'm using the slot. No, because I think you're using the slot of a 3rd level for counter spells, so it's the 3rd level slot is what was used. I think that's how I'd understand it. You instead expend a slot of the replicated spell's level. So that's what I'm assuming that's the spell slot you're using. All right. Let's move into the Draconic Sorcerer, which is the one that we have Metamagic. Sorry, there were changes to Metamagic. Good changes in a lot of aspects, right? Except for Twin Spell, it got completely nerfed. Careful Spell is now useful because you auto succeed on the saving throw and take no damage. Does prepared spells mean spells known and not preparing after a long rest? The changing your prepared. As dumb as it sounds, I think it's literally the difference between prepared spells and spells prepared. I could be wrong. Well, you know what? When we get to the wizard, we'll have a better idea because unless they change the way wizards prepare spells. So we'll have to hold out on that. I see what you're saying. I can't necessarily count the cleric and the druid that we did in the past because this is a newer playtest. And if they shifted the way everybody does spells, then that might just be how it is. So we'll wait because if the wizard is kept the same, which I believe it is, we'll be able to do a direct comparison. Right. So careful spell's better. Distance spell increases by number based on your sorcerer level as opposed to doubling it. Extended spell makes concentration easier. Heightened spell, we'll talk about that. Quicken spell has just been, the wording's been cleared up. They've added Seeking spell from Tasha's Cauldron into the player's handbook, which is a smart move. Subtle spell now removes the need for material components on the affected spell unless it consumes it, so we'll talk about that. Transmuted spell from Tasha's now made its way into the player's handbook. And Twin spell, totally overhauled. It says the 2014 version was too powerful since it basically allowed you to cast 2 spells on the same turn. And to cast the extra spell with a sorcery point discount, the targeting limitation of Twin Spell failed to contain how overpowered the option was and caused confusion. The new version keeps the sorcery point discount with Quicken Spell carrying the extra spell on a turn wait. With this design has allowed us to remove the targeting limitation. So we'll talk about that. Careful Spell, 1 sorcery point, right? You spend a sorcery point and choose a number of creatures equal to your charisma modifier. A chosen creature automatically succeeds on its saving throw against the spell and takes no damage if it would normally take half damage on a successful save. So it works the same way that an evocation wizard works, which is good. Distance spell, right? If it has a range of at least 5 feet, spend a sorcery point and increase the spell's range by a number of feet equal to 30 times your sorcery level. Again, similar to what we saw with Modify spell. When you cast a spell that has a range of touch, you can spend a sorcery point to give it a range of 30 feet. Empowered spell, right? I don't think much changed with Empowered spell at all. Spend a sorcery point to choose a number of damage dice up to your charisma modifier. You can re-roll those dice, take the new rolls. Extended spell, 1 sorcery point, double the duration. Also, if it requires concentration, you have advantage on the saving throw to maintain that concentration, which is nice. Heightened spell is spend 2 sorcery points to give 1 target of that spell disadvantage on its saving throws against that spell. And I think it's disadvantage on all the target saves against that spell rather than only the first save. So if it's a persistent spell that requires multiple saves over time, they have disadvantage on all of them. Again, quicken spell, 2 sorcery points to change the casting time to a bonus action. You can't modify a spell in this way if you've already cast a spell of first level or higher on the current turn, nor can you cast a spell of first level or higher on this turn after modifying in a spell in this way. Just basically meaning you're turning this spell into a bonus action, you're limited to cantrips. Seeking spell, again, 2 points. If you miss, you re-roll the die. To reroll the d20, you must use the new roll, and you can use it even if you've already used Metamagic on another option during the spell casting. Subtle spell, you can spend 1 sorcery point to cast it without any verbal, somatic, or material components, except material components that are consumed by the spell. So again, if it's a spell that has a material component that is not consumed, you can still use subtle spell, even if it is monetary value. Transmuted spell for a sorcery point to change the damage type to acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, or thunder. Smart move to bring it into the base player's handbook. And then the new version of twin spell costs 1 to 5 sorcery points. When you cast a spell of 1st to 5th level that you also cast on your previous turn, by expending a spell slot, you can fuel this turn's casting of the spell by spending a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level, rather than expending a spell slot. So yeah, it's a huge nerf compared to that, but I get it. It was the ways Twin Spell worked was pretty OP. Just flat out 2 spells on a turn. So basically what it allows you to do is to cast a spell using only sorcery points instead of spell slots. So potentially this has a lot of benefits of eventually when you can roll, you're rolling initiative, you're getting sorcery points back. You're possibly using that one sorcerer spell that gives you sorcery points back. So again, an option to allow you to use sorcery points as opposed to having to go through the option of converting sorcery points to spell slots. All right. Then we move on to Draconic Sorcerer. Big changes to Draconic Sorcerer. Formerly, Draconic Bloodline has the new naming convention for sorcerers, X Sorcery, where X is a word like Draconic, Aberrant, or Clockwork. So it's Draconic Sorcery, or Draconic Bloodline. So huge benefit to Draconic Resilience here. Since you get it at 3rd level, you're going to get your hit point maximum increased by 3, and an additional 1 whenever you gain a sorcery level. So that's no difference there, right? It's just the same, but now you get 3 at the start because you're not getting it at level 1. But here's the big benefit. While you aren't wearing armor, your AC equals 10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your charisma modifier. So you basically have unarmored defense, dexterity plus charisma as a Draconic Sorcerer. Previously, it was just 10 plus your dex mod. Now it's 10 plus your dex mod plus your charisma mod, which is a pretty significant bump there. So I like that. Dragon Speech at 3rd level now just lets causes your speech to be understood by all creatures of the dragon type, and you understand their communication. Previously, it was just like the Draconic language. Now, if it's a dragon creature, maybe it doesn't even speak, you can now communicate with it. All right. Elemental Affinity at 6th level. Choose a damage type. Acid, cold, fire, poison, or lightning. You flat out have resistance to that damage type all the time now. And when you cast a spell that deals damage of that type, you can add your charisma modifier to 1 damage roll of that spell. That's built in there. So again, if it's Scorching Ray and you shoot 3 rays, you're not adding your charisma modifier to each damage roll of Scorching Ray. It's just to 1. But if it's Fireball, you'd add that damage to everybody that gets hits with the AoE. Draconic Exhalation. Once per turn when you cast Sorcerous Burst, reminder this was the cantrip that has the exploding d6 damage, you can exhale it in a 15-foot cone rather than selecting a single target. To cast the spell in this way, you must choose the damage type with associated with your elemental affinity feature. So if you chose fire, you would have to do a fire Sorcerous Burst here. But it turns again from a cantrip that was doing 1 single target damage to now a 15-foot cone AoE. When you do so, you make a separate attack roll against each target in the spell's range. So potentially, however many creatures you could hit with a 15-foot cone, which was, again, you just using a cantrip once per turn, you could instead be like, okay, well, I'm going to use this cantrip, and now I get to make as many attack rolls as enemies I can fit in a 15-foot cone. I'm at 10th level, so it's still doing 2d6 base damage, and the d6s explode if I roll a d6. And this is just my action as a cantrip to do AoE, so I could use Quicken Spell to cast a regular spell as a bonus action, which is pretty powerful in the grand scheme of things. And to the point, you could use Distant Spell to add to that. You can expend 1 sorcery point to increase the spell's damage by a number of feet equal to 30 times your sorcery level. You get this at 10th level. This goes from a 15-foot cone to a 315-foot cone. Is that right? When you cast this spell that has a range of at least 5 feet, you can spend 1 sorcery point to increase the spell's range by a number of feet equal to 30 times your sorcery level. Your sorcerer level. 15-foot cone. Increase. That can't work, can it? Range of 5 feet. Did you just turn your cantrip into a 315-foot cone? No. No, that can't work, right? Yeah, it might be because it's selecting a target within range. I don't know. I don't know. That seems like they don't want that to work. I obviously know they don't want that to work because then you would be making, in theory, which it's fun to speculate, but I have to imagine that's not how. That's well, the range isn't self because Sorceress Burst's range is 120 feet for a single target, but you're changing the range to a 15-foot cone. But there's no rules as far as I know about how cones work. Because this is a funky interaction, right? Because it's normally, like I said, 120-foot range, a single target attack. You're changing it from 120-foot range, a single target, to a 15-foot cone in front of you. When you do so, make a separate attack roll for each creature in the spell's cone. So if it works, I can't say that it will with certainty, and I'm assuming that's not the intention. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's fun to speculate about, but I think the way it's designed is that it's still a 15-foot cone. But if you could make it, somebody also said it might be a 15-foot cone that is 300 feet away, which doesn't make sense because you're exhaling it, but that may be more how it would work as opposed to extending the range of the cone 315 feet. That would be the biggest cone in the game. And you do a giant cone. Let's just look. Hang on. Yeah, it does say self 60 feet, and I think that specifically stats as long as it doesn't have a range of self. When you cast a spell that has a range of at least 5 feet, you can spend a sorcery point. It doesn't say... Oh, if it has a range of touch, it goes out to 30. Yeah, it doesn't say, because it does say self 60 feet, but it doesn't specifically say that that can't work with it, but I assume that's the intention, is that it wouldn't work. That would be wild if it does. But either way, my original point before we started thinking about 315-foot cones is that you could Sorceress Burst, target as many people as you could with a 15-foot cone, make separate attack rolls against all of them, possibly having exploding dice, and then use Quicken Spell to cast any other regular spell slot as a bonus action, which would be nuts. And then 14th level Dragon Wings. I don't really love this one personally. It's while your Sorcery Incarnate spell is active, which is the transformation one. You sprout wings, gain a fly speed equal to your speed, and can hover. In addition, at the end of each of your turns, you can flap the wings to unleash magical energy, dealing damage to each creature of your choice within 15 feet of yourself. The damage equals your charisma modifier and is the damage type of your elemental affinity feature. I really don't like this, personally, because it's a feature that is purely based on you using another, like, spell slot-based feature. I guess I have less of an issue with Draconic Exhalation because it's a cantrip and it's giving it a ton of more like versatility, whereas all this is kind of letting you, I don't know. I don't particularly like it. Yeah, exactly, right? They're 14th level, just give them wings. Right, what's the downside? All right. Moving on to Warlock. So, as you'll notice, Warlock does still have invocations, but they also now have prepared spells. And they have actual spell slots. So gone forever is the concept of pact magic and spells coming back on a short rest, at least per this playtest. This puts them more in line with like the half casters like the Paladin and the Ranger, but they do still have invocations, which give them a little bit more. They also have some of the most versatility because they get to choose their spellcasting stat, depending on the pact boon they make at first level. So as you can see here, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. You could be a charisma warlock, an intelligence warlock, or a wisdom warlock. It's up to you. All right, so they added medium armor to the warlock's armor training, which means they used to just have light, now it's medium too. All right, pact boon, we talked about this. I just want to see, it doesn't really tell us. Okay, that's fine. So still a D8 hit point, still the same kind of spellcasting and things like that. Simple weapon proficiencies, light, medium armor, no shields. All right, so at first level, you get your pact boon, right, which is your baby pact. You always have Eldritch Blast and Hex spells prepared, and you choose one of the following: Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Chain, or Pact of the Tome. You determine the identity of which of those existence, whatever it might be from, and as you can see here, it gives you a Pact spell, which was the cantrips we talked about earlier: Pact Weapon, Pact Familiar, or Book of Shadows. And you get to choose your spellcasting ability modifier. If you choose Pact of the Blade, you choose Wisdom or Charisma. Pact of the Chain, Intelligence or Charisma. Or Pact of the Tome, Intelligence or Wisdom. So you have the versatility in what you want to do. Personally, if I have the choice, I'm more likely going to choose Wisdom because a lot more things trigger off of Wisdom in the game than do Intelligence. Charisma has obviously the concept of being a face character and dealing with all that kind of stuff, but a lot more general things are more dangerous and more useful with Wisdom. Perception, wisdom, saving throws, stuff like that. All right. Then you get your spell casting, get your cantrips, spell slots. You get all spell slots back when you finish a long rest. All right, let's take a look at the prepared spells for the Warlock. I assume it's similar to what we saw with the Sorcerer. The number of spells on the list increases as you gain Warlock levels. Whenever that number increases, choose additional spells from the Arcane spell list. The chosen spells must be of a level. For example, if you're a 5th level Warlock, your list of prepared spells can include 6 arcane spells of 1st or 2nd level in any combination. So it's the same thing. Whenever you gain a warlock level, you can swap one out. Okay, there we go. And then you get 2 invocations at the start. If it has a prerequisite, you must meet it. When you gain certain warlock levels, you gain more invocations. Whenever you gain a warlock level, you can choose one of the invocations you know and replace it with another invocation. Okay. Invocations, feats, contact patron, 11th level. Now you can communicate directly. You always have contact other plane prepared. With this feature, you can cast a spell without expending a spell slot to contact your patron, and you can automatically succeed on the spell's saving throw once per long rest. This is to give them some means to contact their patron, similar to like a cleric could divine intervention or commune. All right. At 18th level, you get Hex Master. You have mastered the dread application of Hex, allowing you to cast the Hex spell without expending a spell slot. That is a horrible 18th level feature. That is so bad. Come on. Okay. Let's take a minute. Let's take a minute. Just one sec. Arcane Apotheosis for the Sorcerer. You get Wish auto prepared. You can cast it, and there's no stress of ever losing the ability to cast it. Also, you can cast it once a day to replicate a spell of anything lower than 9th level. Cast that spell using the appropriate spell slot without expending your 9th level spell slot, and you can get it back on a long rest. Or that's once per long rest. And you can still cast Wish in general. So 2 wishes a day, as long as one's dedicated. And the Warlock, you can cast Hex without expending a spell slot. Talk about comparisons. Like, I mean, this is what all of the Paladin transformation abilities that let you do all that crazy shit, those are 18th level. And the Warlock, buddy, you get Hex without expending a spell slot. Come on, man. Really? Okay. Wow. Yeah, anyway, and then you get your epic boon. Okay. So, a lot of changes to Eldritch Invocations. I like a lot of them. Let's take a look. Agonizing Blast is the same, right? Eldritch Blast, you add your spellcasting ability modifier to the spell's damage rolls. Armor of Shadows, Mage Armor, without expending spell slot or material components. 9th level is Ascendant Step, 9th level or higher. Levitate on yourself without expending a spell slot. A lot of them, you'll notice, they're like, you just can do it now without expending a spell slot. Beast Speech, speak with animals without expending a spell slot. Devil's Sight remains unchanged, really. Seen normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical, out to 120 feet. Eldritch Sight, detect magic without expending a spell slot. Eldritch Spear, the range is now 300 feet as opposed to 120 or 150, whatever it is normally. Eyes of the Runekeeper, you read all writing, doesn't decode secret messages. You read the surface meaning and must rely on capabilities to decode it. And then you're going to have a different one for each of your different kind of pacts that you had at first level. Hex is different because Hex only applies to one attack per turn, not all attacks per turn. So Hex was actually nerfed, and then they made that your capstone, which is dumb. All right. Favor of the Chain Master, prerequisite 9th level Warlock or higher, pact of the Chain feature. What do you get? Whenever the familiar hits with an attack, it gets a special damage thing based on the type of familiar you picked. So if you picked an Aberration familiar, it gets Slowing Slime. The target speed is reduced by 15 feet until the end of your next turn, and during that time, it can't take the dash or disengage actions. Celestials get Guiding Light. The next attack roll against that target has advantage. If the target has the invisible condition, that is suppressed. Draconic Might, if they're medium or smaller, they get the prone condition. Fey is Beguiling Sting. The target has the Charmed condition until the end of your next turn and perceives both you and your familiar as the Charmer. Fiend is Unearthly Toxin. They're poisoned until the end of your next turn, and Undead get Whispers of the Grave. The target has the Frightened condition until the end of your next turn. Choose whether the target is frightened of you or your familiar. So it's just a nice little extra benefit if you're going to use your familiar to fight, which I feel like most times people don't, but if you are, it gets like a condition that it gets to apply. Fiendish Vigor, False Life without expending a spell slot. Gaze of Two Minds got a buff here. 5th level or higher as a bonus action, touch a willing creature, perceive through their senses until the end of your next turn. As long as the creature is on the same plane of existence as you, you can use a bonus action on subsequent turns to maintain this connection, extending the duration until the end of your next turn. While perceiving, you use their senses, and you can cast spells as if you're in their space, which is the unique new part, which is nice. Gift of the Protectors. This is if you're a Pact of Tome character. You have the Book of Shadows. With your permission, a creature can use its action to write its name on the page. I contain a number of names equal to your proficiency bonus. When any creature whose name is on the page is reduced to 0 hit points but not killed outright, that creature drops to 1 hit point instead. Once this magic is triggered, no creature can benefit from it until you finish a long rest. As a magic action, you can erase a name. So this basically potentially allows you to apply like almost like a death ward to the whole party, although once triggered, it's ineffectual until the long rest. But it's a nice feature nonetheless. Hexer here. When you cast Hex, it has a range of 600 feet, and you have advantage on any Constitution saving throw you make to maintain your concentration on the spell. I thought at first when I saw they were giving us a Hex-based invocation that I was going to be like, oh, cool, this is the one that lets you apply the damage to every attack in the turn, but no. You can cast it out to 600 feet and have advantage on Constitution saving throw to maintain it, and then at 18th level, you can cast it without expending a spell slot. And so maybe that would have been very useful had you still only had 4 spell slots at 20th level. But now you have all of these spell slots at 20th level, right? So blowing a first level slot to cast Hex, not as big a deal as it was when you had 4 spell slots total. Either way. It can go up to 4d6, which is true, if you cast it with one of your 5th level spell slots that you get at level 17. But you have to be level 17 to get that. All right. Lessons of the first one. I like this one a lot. It gives you a feat. You gain a feat of your choice, such as Skilled, that is available to first level characters that lack prerequisites. So any skill that's available to first level characters without prerequisites, you just get that feat. That's pretty awesome. Life Drinker, which is for your Pact of the Blade, right? When you hit a creature with your Pact of the Blade, they take an extra d6 necrotic damage. In addition to the first time you deal necrotic damage with this invocation on each of your turns, you regain a number of hit points equal to the necrotic damage dealt. So that will do the necrotic damage each time you hit them, but just the first time that you hit them, you're going to heal the necrotic damage. Mask of Many Faces, Disguise Self without expending a spell slot. Master of Myriad Forms, 15th level, Alter Self without expending a slot. Misty Visions, Silent Image without expending a slot. And then Mystic Arcanum is now an invocation, right? So this is an option. You don't have to choose it if you don't want to. Prerequisite, 5th level or higher. Choose one spell from the Arcane spell list that has a level for which you qualify, as shown on the Mystic Arcanum table below. Look for your Warlock level on the table to find the maximum level of spell you can have. You can cast the chosen spell once without expending a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you can do so again. This is repeatable. You can take this as many times as you want, each time choosing a different spell. So if you... I'll be honest, there were some Mystic Arcanum levels, like usually I think it's like the 7th or 8th level spells for Warlocks where there wasn't a lot of great options, so you don't have to. Starting at 5th level, you can take a 3rd level spell for Mystic Arcanum and get anyone and cast it, anyone from the Arcane spell list, any Arcane spell list. So this could be a Wizard spell or something that's typically not on the Warlock list, but I guess the Warlock list now is the Arcane list. So any 3rd level spell, and you can cast it once, Arcane spell list spell, cast it once a day without expending a spell slot. And then obviously 4th all the way up to 17th level, getting a 9th level spell. So potentially, if you're happy with the spell slots that you have, but want to maybe dabble in some higher level magics from 6th to 9th level, you have the opportunity to do so via your Mystic Arcanum invocation. You can also get multiple 9th level spells and also cast it once per day. Let's take a look, because we got to see what we're talking about with invocations. So it is repeatable. So here at 17th level, you get your 9th invocation, which could be Mystic Arcanum 9th level for a 9th level spell. However, I believe what you're getting at is this. Whenever you gain a Warlock level, you can choose one of the invocations you know and replace it with another invocation for which you qualify. Or if the invocation such as Mystic Arcanum involves a choice, you can replace that invocation with itself, but make a different choice. So let's go ahead and look at Mystic Arcanum again. You can take this invocation more than once. Each time you do so, the spell you gain must be of a different level from any other spell you've chosen. So you couldn't get 2 2nd or 2 9th level spells. You could get, so it wouldn't allow that to happen. That seemed like a pretty glaring oversight if they let that through, which is why I checked, and it's not the case. You couldn't get 2 9th level spells. But when you hit 17th level, you could get a 9th level spell, and if you decide, like, hey, I don't really use this invocation anymore from a lower level, you could swap it out and maybe get a different spell from 3rd to 8th level. And it honestly just gives you a lot more versatility, right? If you don't want to dive into the spellcasty aspects of the Warlock and focus on something else, you can. Let's see. One with Shadows, prerequisite 5th level Warlock or higher. When you're in dim light or darkness, you can use your action to give yourself the invisible condition until you move, take an action, bonus action, or reaction. Otherworldly Leap, 9th level. You can cast Jump on yourself without a spell slot or material components. Repelling Blast, whenever you hit a creature that's larger or smaller, you can push them horizontally 10 feet away. Visions of Distant Realms, 15th level. Arcane Eye without expending a spell slot. Whispers of the Grave, 9th level. Speak with Dead without expending a spell slot. And Witch Sight, 15th level. True Sight with a range of 30 feet. So interesting that pretty much all of the invocations are just going to give you some, if it's a spell-based one, it's going to give you some additional usage of spells. So I like that. They kind of explain a lot of that here. With stuff has been replaced. A lot of the ones that were like, you get a one-off use of this spell, they replace those with the Mystic Arcanum invocation. That explains why some of those are missing. So I don't actually think it's that bad. People are saying they think it's bad. I think it's actually a win overall, right? You get, you're getting more spell slots than you had before. You're basically power level wise in that aspect on par with a paladin or a ranger as far as your spell casting goes. You still have cantrips that are powerful. You still have access to things like Eldritch Blast. Hex, the nerf to Hex is kind of a bummer to me. You do have a selectable spellcasting ability modifier based on what you choose, which is interesting to see that. You possibly have extra attack if you want to go that route. You can have extra spells and things with the pact of the, if you go pact of the tome. You get a whole bunch of these, just can give you extra spell slot or extra spells that you can cast for free without expending a spell slot, so that you have just more versatility in your magic. You can use the Mystic Arcanum to take spells you want or don't want. You can swap them out if you would like to. I think overall, I'm digging the changes to Warlock in this aspect. As I have someone who's played a Warlock, those limited spell slots can be rough, and they even brought that up. That sometimes people are like, the Warlock's the only one who wants to take a short rest, and like the party doesn't like feel the need to do so because they're not anybody else getting stuff back. And I have found that like the number of short rests you take in a game largely depends on the party composition. So, I don't know. What do you guys think about this? Are you on board? I saw some people saying that they don't like it. I think the way they handled Mystic Arcanum, I guess I could see it being a nerf because previously Mystic Arcanum was a class feature and didn't tie up your Eldritch invocations, whereas now you're limiting the number of invocations you can have by possibly using them for Mystic Arcanum. But at the same time, it's giving you like versatility, but I guess I'd rather have the spells previously from Mystic Arcanum and like have to pick a spell and not care about it. But again, I am able to sling more spells than I was previously. Yeah, the Sorcerer does get way more spells known, but the Sorcerer can cast up to 9th level spells consistently. And, I mean, there's more... Well, you didn't let me finish, right? Let's get to the Warlock subclass, because now the spells that the Warlock gets are auto-prepared, not from a list for you to choose from. So this is the Fiend Pact Warlock. They get another 10 spells. So 10 spells auto-prepared, on top of the 15 prepared spells that they already have, on top of potential Mystic Arcanum and any of the invocations you choose give you a spell of your choice, right? So Hex, freebie prepared, plus 15 spells is 16, plus 10 from your Fiend or your Pact gives you 26 spells. Plus, if you choose one of the invocation that gives you a spell, that's a freebie one you can cast without spell slots. So you actually come out to about the same, if not more, total spells accessible as a Warlock than a Sorcerer, which, again, I think a good dichotomy there. And one more invocation. You used to cap out at 8 invocations. You now have 9 as a Warlock. All right. So let's look at the patron spells situation here for the Fiend patron, right? You always have these 10 spells prepared, and they don't count against the list. Burning Hands, Command, Scorching Ray, Suggestion, Fear, Stinking Cloud, Blight, Wall of Fire, Flame Strike, Insect Plague. Great spells. And once per long rest, you can pick a spell off that list and cast it for free without expending a spell slot. It's pretty good. So, pick one of those 10 spells once per long rest, freebie cast. No spell slot required. It's not each of them. It's of this. Pick one of the 10 once per long rest, and pick one, and you can cast it without a spell slot. So, at 3rd level, when you get this, your options would be either Burning Hands or Command. You pick one and cast it for free. At 17th level, you'd have access to all 10, and, you could be like, hey, I'm going to cast Wall of Fire or Blight or what have you. You pick one, and that's how it works. So you get one freebie casting on top of the number of spell slots you have, not including invocations or otherwise. 3rd level, Dark One's Blessing has also been improved. It's when it used to be when you reduce a hero. Let's just go to it because we can. Why don't we just do the quick comparison here? So it used to be Dark One's Own Blessing. Remember, previously this used to be a list of just like extra ones you could pick from your limited list of spells known that you had. You could just pick from this list. It wasn't auto granted to you. Previously, it was Dark One's Own Blessing. When you reduce a creature to 0 hit points, you gain temporary hit points equal to the charisma mod, equal to whatever. Now, it is When you reduce an enemy to 0 hit points, or an enemy drops to 0 hit points within 5 feet of you, you gain temporary hit points equal to your spellcasting ability modifier plus your Warlock level. It used to be your charisma modifier. It's changed to spellcasting ability modifier because, right, as we said, you could be a charisma or a wisdom-based Warlock. So now it means if you take out an enemy, you get that, but like if an enemy's next to you and an ally defeats them, you'll still get the temporary hit points, which is a nice shift. Dark One's own luck, I believe, is pretty much the same when you make an ability check an ability check or saving throw. Yep. You can choose to add a d10 to the roll. You do so after seeing the initial roll, but before any of the effects are determined. You can do this spellcasting ability modifier times per long rest. Why are we going to spellcasting ability modifier, not proficiency bonus again? It's like we're flip-flopping on which thing we want to use for stuff. Previously, I think it was once per short or long rest. Now it's spellcasting ability modifier times per long rest. Then we get Fiendish Resilience. Choose a damage type. Whenever you finish a short or long rest, you can change that resistance to whatever you'd like it to be. And then Hurl Through Hell, I believe, is pretty much exactly the same as it was before, which a lot of people don't really play around with the higher level classes, but Hurl Through Hell's always been good. When you hit a creature with an attack roll, you instantly transport it to the lower planes. At the end of the turn, the target returns to the space it was previously occupied. If the target is not a fiend, it must make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. On a fail, it takes 10d10 psychic damage. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, unless you spend a 4th level spell slot to use it again. You can only use it once per turn. Previously, it did not have a saving throw. It just did the damage automatically, and it was once per long rest. And now it causes a saving throw for the psychic damage, but you have the ability to use it more by expending at least a 4th level spell slot. I don't know. I never liked pact magic personally, so I'm down for the changes. All right, now we're on to wizard. Now, okay, we have a prepared spells column, so it's time to check to see if the prepared spells thing is different for wizards, and then we'll go back and we'll look at the other stuff to see. Okay, so a lot of updates to wizards. Still D6 hit points, simple weapons. Again, no tools. Moving on. Spellcasting, here we go. You prepare the list of spells of 1st level or higher that are available to you for you to cast with this feature. To do so, you choose 4 spells from your spellbook, and the chosen spells must be of a level for which you have spell slots. The number of spells on your list increases as you gain wizard levels, as shown on the prepared spells column of the wizard table. Whenever that number increases, choose additional spells from the arcane spell list until the number of spells on your list matches the number on the table. The chosen spells must be of a level for which you have spell slots. For example, if you're a 3rd level wizard, your list of prepared spells can include 6 spells of 1st or 2nd level in any combination chosen from your spellbook. In addition, the wizard feature gives spells that you don't always have prepared, and those spells don't count against the number of spells you can prepare with the spellcasting feature, but those spells otherwise follow the rules. Changing your prepared spells. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can change your list of prepared spells, replacing one or more of the spells there. Preparing a new list requires the time spent studying your spellbook and memorizing the incantations and gestures you must make to cast a spell, at least 1 minute per spell level of each spell you add to the list. So you can completely swap out your list as a wizard, where you cannot do that with the other ones. Intelligence is your spellcasting ability for these spells you cast with your wizard features. You can use your arcane focus or your spellbook as your spellcasting wizard's focus. Let's just go back real quick while we're here and take a look at the bard and see how the bard was handled, because I'm sure it's changed, or it will be changed. Okay. Spellcasting for the bard. Okay. For a long rest, you can practice your bardic arts and replace any spells you've prepared for this class with any other arcane spells of the same level abiding by the school restrictions. Spell slots. Yeah, so that was basically it. At higher levels in the class, you can prepare more spells. The number of spells determine the numbers there determine the number of different spells you can prepare. For example, as a 3rd level bard, you can prepare 2 different 0 level spells, 4 different 1st level spells, and 2 different 2nd level spells. That's what I'm talking about. This is what it used to say, or what it had said previously, right? Again, what did they say? As a 3rd level bard, which, again, 3rd level, had 2 cantrips, 4 1st level, 2 2nd level. Because it also said up here, right? Prepared spells per level. Notice that? It didn't have a column with prepared spells. It had prepared spells per level, and they were tied to the slots. And it says 2 different 0 level spells, 4 different 1st level spells, and 2 different 2nd level spells. And that's like you were locked into those columns previously. That seems to have possibly changed because they're also calling out cantrips as their own thing, where previously they were calling them 0 level spells. Yeah, right? I didn't make that up. Right? Or they were calling them... No, I guess maybe. They still had a cantrip. They were just calling them 0 level spells. All right. Let's just do a quick comparison. We'll go and look at the cleric from the revised species and see what it says. It also had the prepared spells per spell level here in this column. And I think it said the same thing. For example, a 4th level cleric, at the higher levels of the class, the numbers there determine the number of different spells you can prepare of each level. For example, as a 4th level cleric, you can prepare 4 different 0 level spells, 4 different 1st level spells, and 3 different 2nd level spells. So again, it was prepared spells per spell level, whereas here it's prepared spells and spell slots per spell level. So they have changed that. I don't know if that's going to be a cascading effect and it's going to go backwards and make those adjustments. And I figure while we're here, we might as well just do a quick double check on the Druid and the Paladin. We've checked everything else. Again, this could be just the future genesis of what they're going to do. But we'll just take a look real quick. All right, so for the Paladin, or the Druid, prepared spells per spell level. Same thing. Yep, same thing here. So the number of spell slots you have first levels, the number of different spells you can cast. For example, 5th level Druid, 4 1st level spells, 3 2nd level spells, and 2 3rd level spells. Yep. And then his Paladin the same way. Same thing. Yep. So that's new. This is they've changed it from that. So I'm just confirming because I wanted to make sure I wasn't speaking out of my ass. But this could be something, yes, this could be something specific to arcane casters, but that could be entirely what it is. Now, we did notice that you could only change your spells out when you gained a level for the Warlock and the Wizard. However, or for the Warlock and the Sorcerer. However, the Wizard has this thing here, right? Changing your prepared spells. When you finish a long rest, you can change your list of prepared spells, replacing 1 or more spells there. Oh, thank you, Enrico. Preparing a new list requires time spent studying your spell book and memorizing the incantations and gestures you must make to cast a spell. Okay. Wizard's spell book. It's now a 1st level feature as opposed to a sidebar. It is a tiny object, weighs 3 pounds. The magic holds the wizardry spells you know, and it's repository for your arcane findings, writings in a magical cipher, using the spell scribe, the scribe spell, rather. It's vital to your spellcasting. Your spellbook contains the spells you know of 1st level and higher. It starts with the following spells: scribe, spell, and 6 other 1st level spells of your choice from the arcane spell list. Instead of choosing spells, we have a list here. On your adventures, you might find spells that you can add to your spellbook using scribe spell. Whenever you gain a wizard level after 1st, you add 2 arcane spells of your choice to your spellbook without needing to cast scribe spell. Each of these spells must be of a level for which you have spell slots as shown on the wizard table. Ritual caster, you can cast any spell as a ritual if that spell has the ritual tag and the spell is in your spellbook. You don't need to have the spell prepared. The others, you can choose the appearance, blah, blah, blah. All right, this is as far as I got when I was reading this before I started the stream. So, academic at 2nd level. Your time as a scholar has equipped you to recall a broad range of lore. When you take the study action, you can have advantage on any intelligence check you make as part of that action. Arcane recovery. When you finish a short rest, you can choose expended spell slots to recover. The spell slots can have a combined level that is equal to or less than half your wizard level, rounded up, and none of the slots can be 6th level or higher. For example, if you're a 4th level wizard, you can recover 2 levels worth of spell slots. It could be 1 second level or 2 first level. This is once per long rest. Memorize spell becomes an automatic spell you know at 5th level. Modify spell becomes an automatic spell you know at 7th level. Create spell becomes an automatic spell you know at 9th level. And then spell mastery at 15th level. Choose a 1st and 2nd level spell that are in your spell book. You can cast those spells at their lowest level without expending a spell slot when you have them prepared. If you want to cast either spell at a higher level, you must expend spell slots as normal. By spending 8 hours in study, you can exchange one or both of the spells you choose for different spells of the same level. So that's pretty awesome because it comes on at 15th level. And obviously, right, it's 1st and 2nd level spell. I mean, shield looking pretty good as a 1st level spell to just freebie shield whenever you want without expending a spell slot. Misty Step 2, 2 really solid options to just have as freebies that you'll never need to worry about. And then at 18th level, signature spell. Choose 2 3rd level spells in your spellbook as your signature spells. You can always have these spells prepared, and you can cast each of them once at 3rd level without expending a spell slot. When you do so, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. If you want to cast them at a higher level, you can. Again, this is an 18th level ability for a wizard. We saw the other one, the Arcane Apotheosis for the Sorcerer, and the Warlock gets Hex without expending a spell slot. I don't know. Again, at if you prepare the spells from spell mastery at 1st and 2nd level at 15th level, 3 levels earlier, you could cast each of those spells without ever expending a spell slot. And then I'm sorry, Warlocks. I really truly am. Silvery Barbs is a signature spell. Yeah, technically, right? All right, and then we get the Evoker subclass. Okay? Formerly School of Evocation has a new naming convention for wizard subclasses, which I assume is what we're going to see, things like Evoker, Abjurer. These are things that we had seen in the past. So, spell mastery, your created spells. That's true. You could, if you did a funky created spell that was a 1st or 2nd level spell, you could have that become your spell mastery or your signature spell, right? Ted's Tumultuous Counterspell could be your 18th level signature spell, and you could cast it once without expending a spell slot, out to 300 something feet with no components. But either way, okay, Evocation Savant at 3rd level. Let's see. Choose 2 evocation. Oh, this is interesting. Choose 2 evocations from the arcane spell list, each of which must be no level higher than 2nd level. You add those spells to your spellbook. So it's not like having the there is. In addition, whenever you cast Scribe spell to add a spell to your spellbook, the gold cost and casting time are halved. So you get that, and you also just get 2 freebie evocation spells added to your spellbook. I really like that. It's a nice little quality of life. And then also Sculpt spells. When you cast an evocation spell that affects other creatures that you can see, you can choose a number of them equal to 1 plus the spell's level. The chosen creatures automatically succeed on their saving throws against the spell, and they take no damage if they would normally take half. So that's pretty much the same. 6 levels Potent Cantrip. When you cast a cantrip at a creature and you miss the attack or the target succeeds on a saving throw, the target takes half the cantrip's damage but suffers no additional effect from the cantrip. Okay, so you kind of almost get like a graze for your cantrips, right? So when you attack or they succeed, they still take half damage. Pretty solid. I like that a lot, actually. Empowered Evocation. Whenever you cast an evocation spell from the arcane spell list, you add your intelligence modifier to 1 damage roll of that spell. Solid. And then Overchannel at 14th level. When you cast an arcane or wizard spell of 1st level through 5th level that deals damage, you can deal maximum damage with the spell. The first time you do this, you suffer no adverse effect. If you use this feature again before you finish a long rest, you take 2d12 necrotic damage for each level of the spell immediately after you cast it. Each time you use this feature again before finishing a long rest, the necrotic damage per level increases by a d12. It ignores resistance and immunity. I'm pretty sure that's almost identical to the existing Overchannel ability, so that's pretty cool. see. Oh, let's see. Feels like if you didn't take... Yeah, so there's quite a bit of stuff here. 2 evocations. Now also works with cantrip rolls, not just saving throws. Oh, attack rolls. So that was the benefit. Potent cantrip now works on attack rolls, which is nice. So now we're done. We finished all of the classes. Now we're on to the rules glossary. All right. Change log for the rules glossary. New and revised entries. Death saving throws replaces the dying condition that appeared in the previous UA. Influence action clarifies that the DM drives both the use and the DC of this action. True Sight clarifies the appearance of visual illusions to the creature with True Sight. Removed entries, Artisan's Tool, Dying Condition, Exhausted Condition. Exhausted Condition. Interesting. Gaming Set, and Musical Instrument Tool. Okay. So is that it? Those are the only things that are new. Okay, so the rest of this should be all normal. Right? Nothing crazy here. Death saving throws replaces the dying condition. On your 3rd successful death save, you regain 1 hit point, but you are unconscious and start a short rest. Okay. You remain unconscious until you regain more hit points or until another creature uses an action to administer first aid to you, which requires a successful DC 10 wisdom check. This playtest rule removes the notion of being stable at 0 hit points, and it removes the stabilizing a creature rule on page 197 of the player's handbook. Okay. That's just cleaning stuff up, right? That's nothing crazy. What else? It was the influence action and True Sight. Okay. Okay, the DM determines when this action is available, and it can be used only on creatures controlled by the DM. It isn't mind control. It can't force a creature to do something this creature is counter to its alignment or otherwise repugnant to the creature. The action has 3 main parts. Okay, so they just added in this bit that basically just says that, like, you don't get to choose this. It's the DM's choice, which is fine. What was the other bit? I already forgot. Oh, True Sight. All right. The creature with True Sight has enhanced vision within a specific range. Within that range, their vision pierces through the following: darkness, they can see normal and magical darkness; invisibility, the creature can see creatures that have the invisible condition and objects that are obscured by magic; visual illusions. Visual illusions appear transparent to the creature, and the creature automatically succeeds on saving throws against them. Transformations, it discerns the true form of any creature or object it sees, and the creature can see into the ethereal plane. Okay. So the only thing is they just made it seem that you can very clearly True Sight works against illusions. They clarified that influence works only when the DM says it works. And then the death saving throws just, again, got rid of the dying condition. So that's it. The rules glossary. I'm surprised there actually wasn't that much to the rules glossary. And then again, just removed some stuff. I wonder why they removed the tools. I wonder what the reasoning behind that was. But yeah, that's the entirety. Took us just shy of 3 hours to go through all 50 pages. But yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Can champion fighter get up after they succeed their death saving throw because they get 1 HP? Oh, because they have not 0? I think technically... Well, no, because I'm not sure, to be honest. It doesn't say when you gain hit points, right? It says... Okay. Your 3rd successful death save, you regain 1 hit point, but you are unconscious and start a short rest. You remain unconscious until you regain more hit points. Yeah, so in theory, the champion fighter would be able to get up on the turn after its successful death saving throw. We'll go up and look, but make sure that that ability says that it works when you're not unconscious. Where is that? Yeah, at the start of each of your turns, you regain hit points equal to 5 plus your con mod if you have no more hit points left. So you don't have to be conscious to heroic rally. So between that new update, advantage on death saving throws, and getting 1 hit point automatically on an 18 to 20 and heroic rally, it's pretty tough for a champion fighter to stay down. Oh yeah, you're right. They said they removed the exhausted condition. Let's see. So just gone entirely. All right, so due to the removal of the exhausted condition, based on that, they're reverting. If it's not here, it's what it was in the player's handbook in 2014. So that means that exhausted is what it, like, we reverted back to the way exhaustion is handled currently in 5e. It's not changed. Now that, again, could always come back in, but that's just how it is at the moment. We'll go to HP and start a short rest, yes, but because it says yeah, so but because here it says if they regain any more hit points. So even if they roll an 18 to 20, they go to 1 hit point and wake up conscious at the start of their turn. But if they are stable at the start of their next turn, actually, no, wait. On a successful save, you regain 1 hit point, but you are unconscious and start a short rest. So the death saving throw happens at the start of your turn. And this says at the start of each of your turns. So I guess it's tricky, because in theory, right, if you succeed, get 1 hit point stabilized, then also it's at the start of your turn you can get the hit points, depending on how your DM rules it. You could possibly... I think the name of it being Heroic Rally, it's probably meant to be like, I'm conscious, now I'm awake, and now I'm in the fight. I don't know. I do really like the exhausted condition that was presented in the Unearthed Arcana. It's probably one of my favorite new rules, so I like it. I do like the new exhaustion, so I hope we get that back. But yeah, I like a lot of the changes here. They didn't really change any of the spells. They didn't change anything, I don't think. They added some new spells. I don't know, it feels weird to say that I think I like everything. The only things that I didn't like was those couple of, like, funky things when we were in the Barbarian section. I was like, oh, this is so cool, it's amazing, that's so good. And then you guys were like, it doesn't work like that. I'm like, ah, damn it. That's just me. Like, the Gray's weapon property not working with rage damage, which I get it, but I also really like that concept. And that I totally misread Frenzy and that it only works on the first target you hit, not every target you hit. I get the reasoning why on that too, but yeah, the biggest nerf was Hex, really. Was the limitation to it only applying to the first hit on a turn. Again, if you cast it with higher levels, it does still increase the duration, and the damage goes up from like 1d6 to 2d6, or all the way up to, I think, 3d6, using higher level slots, so it kind of makes up for it. But even at a low level, if I had 2 Eldritch Blasts at 5th level, and I didn't want to cast Hex with a, I don't know, whatever I forget what the level spells are, I don't know, I still could do more damage, and I didn't have to expend a higher level slot. But I don't know. Where is it? Yeah, so it's a 1st level spell, so I have to spend a 3rd or 4th level slot to get it to do 2d6 damage, and a 5th level slot or higher to get it to do 3d6 damage. It is also limited to being a Warlock spell now, so it's not like you can try to, like, cheese it by getting it on another class and then being able to use it, because, like, you know, for a Warlock, now that their 5th level spell slots, you know, 5th level spell slots for them come on like 17th level now, it'd be a long time to get that extra damage. So, and like I said, if you were able to, like, get Hex on a Sorcerer, you'd be able to get a lot more use out of it for the having your spell slots come online a lot earlier. But since they made Warlocks essentially a half caster, they're going to get access to their higher, like, those spell slots significantly later on, which is something I didn't really think about that I'm now kind of putting my mind to. So previously, as a Warlock, you were super limited in your spell slots, but they were automatically upcast to the highest level that you had at the time. But you only ever had maybe at maximum 4 spell slots. But you were still getting 5th level spells at 9th level. Now you're getting 5th level spells at 17th level. You have a lot more spells you can cast because you have we have actual spell slots. You get a little bit more on the invocation side. The invocations are a little better tuned to allow you to have more access to spells. You get spells from your subclass, which is all good. But like I said, at 9th level, you were casting 5th level spells, whereas now you're going to have to be at 17th level. I think if you're going to make this change, like, I don't know, is it one of those situations where you should, like, you're going to make this change, and make them essentially a half caster, similar to the Paladin and the Ranger? Should you bump their hit die up to a D10 to make them essentially a half caster? I'm still kind of hoping that the Monk gets that bump, but I don't think it's going to happen. It gets to a D10 hit die. But yeah. Let's check Hunter's Mark. Somebody brought up Hunter's Mark. Let's go back and look at Hunter's Mark in the... I don't remember if it was in... Is it in this one? I don't think they include the spells if they're not specifically updated. Right? It's not in here anywhere. Rock Advantage, Hide. No, we know it was in the one with the Ranger. So we'll go look at Hunter's Mark. Where the hell were the spells? Did they not alter Hunter's Mark? Maybe they just didn't change it. I guess they didn't. Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, I guess they didn't change Hunter's Mark at all. Hunter's Mark is just like the Warlock got, the Ranger got additional usage out of Hunter's Mark, but they didn't actually change. They changed Bark Skin, I remember that, but I don't think they actually changed Hunter's Mark itself. We'll just double check. Hunter's Mark. Until the spell ends, you deal an extra d6 damage to the target whenever you hit it with a weapon attack. Yeah, so Hunter's Mark, as far as we know, is exactly the same as it was. Whereas Hex was previously, again, each attack, now it's only once. Again, everybody, it's all playtest still. There's the potential that this could all get thrown out completely, or the feedback will be strong enough that they choose one way or another. They've done that with a bunch of things already we've seen removed. So perhaps Hex will go back. Perhaps Warlocks will get an actual useful capstone. I don't know how you make the Wizard capstone and the Sorcerer capstone and then decide that the Warlock is going to get just Hex without a spell slot. If you're going to do that, you got to be like, Hex without a spell slot, it's not concentration. Because hell, as it stands right now, your playtest Ranger can do its version of Hunter's Mark without expending a spell slot, and it's concentration free. And they get that at first level. So I don't know. Arcanum, are you talking about Mystic Arcanum? It is a choice. Mystic Arcanum is entirely a choice at this point. You don't have to take it. It is an invocation. That's the downside, the other side that I'm thinking about, right? Because we were saying before, like, as a Warlock, now you don't get 5th level spells to 17th level, but you get a lot more spell slots. And Mystic Arcanum, you know, if you don't want it, you don't have to have it. But here's the thing. Previously, it was just like a thing you just got each time you were to get it. Now, it's taking up your invocation slots. Yes, you do have one more invocation slot than you did previously. But you have to choose to sacrifice one of your invocation slots to take a Mystic Arcanum, whereas previously it was just like, okay, yeah, I only had 4 slots, but I had up to 5th level and I got them like at the same speed as the other arcane casters. And then I got Mystic Arcanum. It was a freebie thing that just happened whenever I would get access to those other spells. Sure, it was only 1, but I got them. And then I had my invocations on top of that. Now it's like, okay, well, I have to sacrifice invocation slots to choose Mystic Arcanum instead. But I also, when I use Mystic Arcanum, I have the entire arcane spell list as opposed to just the limited Warlock list. So when I get to choose a 6th level spell, I get every arcane 6th level spell in my repertoire, as opposed to just like the 5 or 6 spell options or 10 options I had for the Warlock. So you're trading out, you're getting a lot of versatility and options and choice in that respect, but I do still think you are kind of losing out in the long run. I'll be honest, I never really liked Warlock that much anyway, personally, so it's not like a huge blow to me, but I do know a lot of people very much enjoy Warlock. And it does seem like a Fiend Pact Warlock would be very strong. For the first time, you don't have to be a Hexblade to make the use out of Pact of the Blade. You can actually do quite a bit of useful Pact of the Blade stuff with just the Pact itself, which is nice. But, it's a severe slowdown on your abilities. This would be an interesting one to follow, kind of like the Jeremy Crawford model of playing a game and sitting down at the table with somebody with the 2024 rules and somebody with the 2014 rules, and play a 10th level campaign with a Warlock from 2024, a Fiend Pack Warlock from 2024, and a Fiend Pack Warlock from 2014, and just see the disparity. I'd be very interested to see how things go, right? Because you're slinging a lot more spells in 2024. They're not maximized, but you're slinging fewer, but they're maximized, I guess you only have, 2 slots if you were a 10th level character. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what you think. They said they wanted to remove these non-choice choices, so to be forced into choosing Mystic Arcanum to keep up with other mages feels like it goes against one D&D design direction. Well, I think what they meant was they didn't want to have, every Warlock, kind of a non-choice was Eldritch Blast and Hex. So they gave you Eldritch Blast and Hex, is what they meant by the non-choice choices, and the contact other plane to talk to your patron kind of a thing. But, yeah, I get the point, if Mystic Arcana was kind of built into the class, now it feels like, well, here's the other weird thing about it. Okay. So, we were just talking, right, about how, let's pick, what's a good level? 11th level. Okay? Let's go look at 11th level. Because this is kind of interesting now that I think about it. So you're 11th level. Okay? You have, per this, 4 first level spells, 3 third level spells, or second level spells, and 3 third level spells. You have a total of 10 prepared spells. You have your pact spells. You have, 4 cantrips, right? You can only cast with your spell slots 3rd level spells. But if you choose your newest invocation that you got to be Mystic Arcanum, you can cast a 6th level spell. So you're like, I can be slinging all my 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level spells I want, plus 1 6th level spell. Which I think is a really weird way to go about it. Because, the Mystic Arcanum works kind of outside of the spell slot situation. But yeah, so a 10th level Warlock could cast, or an 11th level Warlock, let's say. You'd only cast 3rd level spells regularly, but you could cast 1 6th level spell a day. It's kind of funky. I like a lot of the things that they did. I like the way they made a lot more, with the exception of possibly Mystic Arcanum, that there's no trap choices for invocations. I felt like there were some that were pretty weak, where it's like, this one lets you cast this spell as much as you want without a spell slot. This one lets you cast it once per long rest. So they kind of did a lot of changing to give you, like I said, no traps, as it were, which I like. But and I do like the change to the invocation, the pact coming online at first level, getting this versatility of the spell casting, kind of embedding some stuff, right? Like the pact boon of the blade, if you choose it at first level, you get to use your spellcasting ability modifier. You get to, this would be the only time, potentially, you could have a wisdom-based attack stat for a weapon, because we've had intelligence with the artificer, and we've had charisma with the hexblade, but you could be a pact boon warlock with wisdom as your casting stat and have a wisdom attack modifier, which could be kind of interesting, a little bit unique in that aspect. And it could get you extra attack just built into the cantrip that allows you to summon the blade, which is kind of cool. But I like that stuff. I thought that was really cool. The like I said, I like the tweaks to the invocations. Pact of the Chain might be something I actually would possibly consider even playing potentially now. I like the accessibility of Contact Patron. I think that's a useful ability there. Hexmaster is garbage, and I do feel like you're a little bit behind on your being an arcane caster, because now you're kind of a half caster, but sort of not with Mystic Arcanum. No, you can get +5 damage on Eldritch Blast if you just take Agonizing Blast as your invocation. You don't have to have the tome for that. You just take Agonizing Blast. Whenever you cast Eldritch Blast, you add your spellcasting ability modifier to the spell's damage rolls. So you could use the book if you didn't want to take Agonizing Blast. That's an option for you, but... I think Sorcerer, I do think Warlock's got the shaft out of this Unearthed Arcana. I think there's no doubt in that in my mind, right? Wizards, base wizard stuff, pretty good all across the board, actually really good. And then the addition of all of the crafting of spells, fantastic. I lost my shit over that. I'm sure you saw that earlier on. Sorcerer, like, what? It's a whole new class, right? They did so much overhaul to the way the Sorcerer works and the different kind of innate spells that they gave them. So much better. Huge boon to Sorcerer. On the table for a class I would consider playing. And, like, I was considering playing some of the 5th edition Sorcerers that are out there right now, but only after the more changes from Tasha's, because I'd have to do some things and tweaks myself. It's like, choose like Tome of Foes or like a Monsters of the Multiverse Genasi, because they get a cantrip and a spell and you can use it with your spell slots. And then if you pair it with a background from like Strixhaven that gives you a feat that lets you get some spell casting, and then you do that, and then you take like Aberrant Mind Sorcerer that gets you extra spells that are auto prepared, and you do all of that, and you take a feat that gets you the Metamagic stuff early. And you were to do all that, and I was like, if I built all of these fun little things and twist them all together, I could play a Sorcerer that I'd feel comfortable with, because it would be as good as playing a Wizard or a Cleric, right? Like, that's how I felt. And I had done that, and I did it in like a one-shot, and it was a good time. I would play this one significantly more, because they added a bunch of unique options. They gave them a lot of quality of life, some fun cantrips. I love exploding dice mechanics. That's pretty cool. So a big win for Sorcerer. Wizards were always good, and now they're better because they have the spell crafting capabilities. Like, I could already see if I were to implement those rules into my wizard that I play in my Great Modron March campaign, I would just wreck Jordan's day with the ability to craft all these funky spells. Fighter. Really big changes to Fighter with the weapon mastery system. Gives them a lot more uniqueness and versatility there. Champion Fighter is still kind of meh, in my opinion, but that's just me. It's it's a baseline, right? It's like, like you don't know what you want to do. You want to play a fighter. You don't really want to think too much about what you're playing or have too many options. Champion fighter is just like a static. The numbers kind of do their own thing. But base fighter got a lot of interesting stuff, right? Inconquerable was nice. The fact that Indomitable gives you a bonus equal to your fighter level is nice. The whole Weapon Master Adept feat. I am curious if Weapon Master, the class, subclass, makes its way into this, or if like they just forego that because they've done the Weapon Mastery system, or sorry, Battle Master fighter. Technically, the superiority die would still work on top of all of the other things, which could add. Now that I think about it, could you like so there's like tripping attack was one, but also a weapon with topple could knock somebody prone. So you could potentially choose different battle master maneuvers and then pair them with the weapon mastery system to get like a bunch of crazy combos going. So potentially that could be really interesting as well. I think Barbarian also a lot of great adjustments to Barbarian too. In the long run, I like the consolidation of some things. I like that you can now use your rage and reckless attack with thrown weapons. I love the concept that I can be so angry I have advantage on perception checks. I think that's fantastic. I'm sure there's a lot of memes that are going to come out from that. I like that Feral Instinct now, like you get the advantage on dexterity saving throws a little bit later, but it's an always on thing. I like that Indomitable Might is actually at a level where it's useful because it's a 9th level. I like the changes to Brutal Critical just being a static number. Persistent Rage, the fact that Rage now lasts 10 minutes long is pretty nuts. Relentless Rage giving you healing for when you want to get back up is also great. Primal Champion got a little nerf, but you get it a little bit earlier. I think, and the Weapon Mastery system as a whole I'm a fan of, right? I like that quite a bit. I like the stuff that we figured out, the kind of nonsense that you could do with weapon mastery, right? The fact that a fighter with potentially 4 attacks, not including action surge, could have just like a base minimum 20 damage a turn by just using the graze feature. Or the fact that you could shoot somebody with a longbow as a fighter and knock them back 40 feet with no saving throw. Or bring down a giant to its knees with the topple, ability. So many cool, like just the Vex feature with like a rapier, do so many cool things. People brought up Barbarian Rogue. Technically, yeah, I guess you could. Hang on. Hold, please. How would you feel about create spell increasing the spell level by 1 for each modification? I'll be honest with you. I'm fine with it as it is. I made that point. Like I could understand if it bumped up the if it had to bump up the level of the spell, the created spell, to be a little bit stronger. But I also kind of like the way it is because it's OP and I love it. But you can make an argument that it should be upcast if you're adding modifications to it, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. Maybe that's the intention, and it just didn't come through. Okay. You know how to take a subtle attack into a deadly one. Once on each of your turns... Here, hang on, let me zoom in here. Once on each of your turns, when you take the attack action, you could deal extra damage to one creature you hit with an attack roll if you're using... attacking with a finesse weapon or a ranged weapon, and it has at least one of the following requirements met. So, attacking with a finesse weapon or a ranged weapon, you say? So, yeah. Huh. So technically, it's not the best situation. Because a dart is considered a ranged weapon. And it's also considered thrown. And it's finesse. So you don't have to use dexterity. You could. in theory, be a rogue barbarian and rage and use reckless attack to throw a dart with reckless attack, giving yourself advantage on that attack roll because you're using a strength-based weapon and it's a weapon attack. And because of the way rogue is written, that it has to be a ranged weapon and a dart is considered a ranged weapon, you could self-trigger sneak attack every turn with reckless attack by throwing darts. I think. Or, to your point, yeah, well, I guess you're right. Because in my head, I'm thinking a finesse weapon, thinking you have to use the finesse property. But that's not true. It just has to be a finesse weapon. You don't have to use finesse. So yeah, I could, as a barbarian. Oh. Huh. I could use a rapier as a barbarian, which has the finesse property and the vex property, and attack somebody recklessly if I wanted to using my strength, have advantage on that attack. See, the tricky part is because the barbarian can't change the mastery property. Because I was like, rapier is when you hit somebody with vex, the next attack you have against them has advantage. Is there any other thing we could do that would be interesting? Because basically the concept is, right, a rapier is a d8 damage weapon. I attack them with it with reckless attack, which gives me advantage on strength-based attack rolls, and nothing in the ranger or the rogue says I have to be using dexterity. I just have to be using a finesse weapon, and I could self-trigger sneak attack all the time, which is true. I was just trying to think, is there like a way to, because there's no way to change vex, and vex is useful, but it's not super useful because you're already using reckless attack in this instance. But I like that you could use it with range. I guess technically you could have always done this in 5e because you could have always used strength-based stuff to be a rogue if you wanted to. Nothing said you had to. But I like that I could throw darts now and be a ranged-based rogue barbarian, which is just so... And if you're raging, you'd have advantage on stealth because you could make stealth a dexterity or a strength check. This is breaking my brain. Okay. So you could be a barbarian and use strength for stealth and have advantage on it because you're raging. Your rage damage would apply to the darts because they're strength-based. You could reckless attack, throw them, and because they're a ranged weapon. So I think the difference... What? This doesn't make any sense. This is so ridiculous. Yeah, I guess that works. I guess. Right? Does that work? Yeah, or the option would be a scimitar and you get the other attack, right? You could be a barbarian rogue with the scimitars. Dual wielding scimitars. Hit one, reckless attack, hit, do sneak attack damage, extra attack, and then with the Nick property, get another attack and still have your bonus action open to you to do whatever you'd like to do. And if you were a frenzy barbarian, you could also have the extra damage from reckless attack stacked on top of that, on top of the sneak attack damage. Still have your bonus action to do something else. There's interesting options there. But ultimately, the best part is you could just be so angry from your rage that you hide with advantage on your stealth check that you use strength for. It's just ridiculous. Or you could hide as a bonus action with your rogue Yeah, there you go. 3 attacks with scimitars. One of them dealing extra frenzy damage, also sneak attack damage, also with advantage from reckless attack, and then run away and use your bonus action to strength based rage hide with advantage. Just it's so ridiculous. Like it gives me like Drax vibes of like I'm so still that I'm invisible. Or like somebody in the chat just said you just as a barbarian screaming you don't see me, and it's so terrifying that the enemies don't actually look at them because they're scared. Which is kind of funny to me. Yeah, whip barbarian could work too, right? Yeah, the whip's not as useful now. I mean, it would be one weird, crazy long chain of multi-classing to do like fighter, rogue, barbarian to be like a high enough fighter to get the ability to change out weapon properties, to then still have reckless attack, to then still be able to do sneak attack. You know what I mean? Like if you could put something else on the rapier, I don't know. Like I don't know what else is the rapier. What other proficiencies could you put on it? Because the rapier just has what? Just finesse. So melee weapon. You could put slow on it, I guess. Right, that's the only other thing you could put on the rapier. Melee weapon heavy, no. Versatile, no. Melee heavy, no. It's not a light weapon. Heavy two-handed or versatile. Yeah, so the only other thing you could swap the rapier out with if you wanted to would be the slow feature, which wouldn't be bad to reduce somebody's movement speed by 10 feet, you know, because you have a faster movement. Unfortunately, it doesn't really give you a lot of options for this weird build that we're kind of concocting in our head here. Again, the scimitar, finesse and light, that gives you some options. You have the Nick property there. You have the Vex property if you really wanted it to. But yeah, I don't know. Dead thrown weapon fighting style. Yeah, it's true, thrown weapon fighting style. You could do quite a bit of funky stuff with this dart throwing rage stealth barbarian. It would be nuts and just utter nonsense. And like you are only doing a d4 damage, which isn't a lot, right? But you are, don't forget you're factoring in rage damage on top of this. It's just like a base thing. So you're adding at minimum +2. So you're at a d4 +2 plus whatever your strength modifier is. So you've got that going for you. And if you wanted to get really stupid crazy and you had the stats, you could go monk. Because they did say that monk in the... Oh, this is something I don't think I mentioned in my other video. I'll bring it up now. At the Content Creator Summit, they mentioned that monks are going to start out doing a d6 damage instead of a d4 with their fists. So that's like something they knew they were going to update, so that like I guess in theory, if you dipped one level in monk, you could do the darts if the darts are considered a monk weapon as a d6 as opposed to a d4. So with this 4 multi-class, I guess we probably would ignore that we wouldn't need the fighter level. So we just need 3. We just need monk, barbarian, and rogue to be able to throw d6 darts angrily while stealth hiding and doing sneak attack. But so anyway, that's what that was about. So I don't know. It's interesting. I like a lot of what I'm seeing here. The changes are obviously, like I said, it's all still playtest. So you know, you never really know what ultimately is going to end up here. This could all get thrown out, right? They have said in the past that as far as playtest stuff goes, they just kind of throw a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and they want to try to, and I think that's probably the best way to go about playtest is to make stuff be really broad spectrum. And like you can go real severe changes and then like you know what, nobody liked that, but maybe everybody did. And I think that's kind of what they said was going on with the wild shape stuff. Like, you know, they went so crazy the other way with wild shape, and obviously nobody really liked it. So like, don't worry, we've kind of already changed that, but we did make the adjustments. So I don't know. Some of this stuff, if people have a lot of comments on it, everybody, you know, hates one particular thing, probably like the changes to the Warlock. Now, I don't know really what you would do to fix those changes to the Warlock. Obviously, you need to fix the 18th level ability, hands down. But it is what it is. So, yeah, I don't know. Just throwing rocks. Yeah, check out my dart. That's a brick. Yeah, that's true. A brick is a dart if you throw it hard enough. That is very true. Did they pull the play? No, I had like an issue where I went to the website and like the playtest disappeared, and then I had to refresh it and it showed up. So I've still got it here. I'll click refresh. So yeah, I don't know. It's still here for me, but there you go, folks. That is a 3.5 hour coverage of the 1D&D playtest, playtest 5. Again, the summit they did say was going to have all of the classes in it. It obviously didn't include the monk. I thought it was going to. I thought what they said in that video where they're like, the monk will next time, and I thought that meant that like they were going to show the weapon mastery part of the monk next time, not realizing that the monk's going to kind of get left out and be its own standalone thing, and I guess a future playtest. Did they change how to determine the DC for the influence action? I know it didn't seem like they had made. I didn't read it that way, but maybe there was something I missed. Oh, what? Hold on. Let's check. I'm seeing some updates here. Let's go double check that there may have been changes to things. Everyone hold. You said there was a change to the 15th level fighter ability. Really? Let's look. Let's see if things are changed on my end. I wonder if they changed anything else. Because now if you're saying they've already changed stuff. It's in the table, but it's not in the description. Okay. So this is something that you guys just pointed out, but I'll bring it up here. Take a look at this. I didn't notice this before. So we know we got the feat at 4th level for fighter, and then again a feat right after that at 5th level. I didn't realize that there's also apparently a feat at 15th level, and then a feat, you know, normally at 16th level. When you scroll down and go through the order, because I was just like reading through the order list here, and I was like, feat. Oh, feat. Okay, feat at 5th level. And it goes 14, 15, 16. So down here in the description, I didn't have a feat here, but apparently in the chart does. Yeah. So that was something new that I missed out on, which is, I was wondering why they like kicked them out of their extra feat, but I also kind of like that they're back to back now. Like more, they used to be like, was it 4, 6, and then like 14, 16? But I kind of like that it's 4, 5, 15, 16, that they're like back to back. I don't know. I just like that. There you go. John Cena, the perfect example of rage-based stealth checks. You can't see me. It's so ridiculous. Maybe that's just how it has to be. There's the barbarian walking around like this. Can't be seen. because they're so angry. That's too funny. Um, yeah, I don't know. So I'm gonna thank all of you. Yeah, I assume the chart was accurate because I just didn't realize they were missing a feat. Because the rogues, I think, still get an extra feat in the playtest as well, and the rogues always had one more than the standard. So I just like like I said, I like it being back to back. I've never really considered playing a sorcerer, other than like that kind of like funky weird builds that I was mentioning. And I definitely have never really considered playing a fighter. I've multi-classed into fighter for specific things at a point, but I've never really truly considered possibly playing a fighter from like 1 to 20 if the opportunity provided itself. And these changes do make me consider those. Um, and I was looking to play a barbarian in the future at a point, and the adjustments to the barbarian make me even more interested in giving that a shot. Wizard is just as enjoyable as ever, and unfortunately, Warlock is where Warlock is. I don't know. I think that's, like I said, playtest feedback's going to be important. My biggest criticisms are going to be about the Warlock. Everything else was pretty much stellar. The new spells, great. Even the Warlock spells, I like the new spells that they did for the pact boons and stuff. But the 18th level ability, kind of weird. The fact that Mystic Arcanum is a choice when previously, like, you had your invocations separate. I don't know. I don't. I like the level 1 stuff that you get for the Warlock. I like some of the aspects of it. I don't like the 18th level. And like I said, I don't have an answer. I do not know how I would fix the Warlock to make it quote unquote better. But I don't like the going up to, like, you get 5th level spells at a half caster progression, but you can still cast like 6th level spells earlier than you could cast a 5th level spell regularly. It's funky, but I don't have a great answer on how to fix it. So I'm sure we'll get some suggestions and maybe we'll see that get thrown out. The other part of it is this is supposed to be the 2024 release, right? If everybody, which it sounds like from the chat and it sounds like what people are telling me on the internet, people are coming down hard on these Warlock changes. So this could be the ultimate test of, do you really have enough time between now and 2024 to redesign the Warlock based on feedback of people saying we don't really enjoy it or like it that much? You're on a tight deadline to get these books to print sometime next year. Is there enough time to complete all of those changes and make the edits accordingly and then actually come out with something new and revised? I don't know. I'm curious to see. But so I am going to go get lunch. Yeah, Q3 2024 gives them just over 13 months to get to print. Yeah, we don't know when in 2024, right? It could be December 31st, 2024. It's technically 2024, right? I don't think we're fighting that kind of a minutia thing, but technically they could release it on New Year's Eve of next year, and it did come out in 2024. Nobody lied. I don't think we're getting it in January of 2024. I'll tell you that much. They got a lot more stuff to playtest because they still haven't even done all the classes. Now, I will say I was worried when we were doing this like 1 to 2 classes a clip, and then we just did 5 all at once. So we've got the monk left. So my guess is the next playtest will probably be like the monk, and then the revised version of the bard, rogue, and ranger, or maybe cleric, or however they want to do it. So like, we'll get the monk right out the gate, and then we'll start going through revisions until they kind of get to a point where they feel like everything looks good, and then they'll kind of just, all right, we'll move on to the next bit, whatever we want to talk about, monsters or what have you. Holiday season could be a big... So here's the thing, right? There's supposed to be a Gen Con. There's going to be some... They're trying to go to places where creators and people are. You want to take Gen Con next year? Drop stuff next year at Gen Con, right? You have the Player's Handbook 2024 release present at Gen Con. You'd have a lot of people going to just get that book in person. You could sell a lot of tickets that way. Not saying that that's what they want to do. That's a pretty bold move. It also put all of your other fellow competitors on their back foot if you're like, we're bringing it out at Gen Con. Like, that's a big move, right? Holiday season, also a smart move. Hey, what am I going to get you for Christmas? Oh, wait, I already know. 2024 rule books. The other side of it is they said they're going to stagger the release. They're not doing a box set all at once of Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide. They're going to release them 1, 2, 3. However, it's going to be whatever order. You could do a big push and get it out at Gen Con and really throw people for a loop. The monk is the only class we haven't gotten yet. No, they're going to do all 3. Monster Manual, the core rule books. They just didn't tell us what order they're going to be released in. They're going to be a phased release, 1, 2, 3. But yeah. Anyway, all right. I'm hungry. It's 3 o'clock. I haven't had lunch, so I'm gonna go get something to eat. Thank you all for coming out and checking out the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, turn notifications on. Please consider doing so. Got a lot more stuff coming out. A lot of other videos to work on. At some point, I will do a TLDR version of this that hopefully gets us down to less than 3.5 hours. And I'll also have my thoughts, and I won't be able to be like super over the top where I'm like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever, and then find out like, oh, it doesn't work. So anyway, I will see you all next time.